Chapter 9:36. Weakness. What weakness is it? Everyone asked in unison. When everyone heard about that matter, they were all shocked. Everyone had to look up to this person whom they had never met before, not daring to underestimate him. But right now, Zhan Xingfeng said that he had discovered this person's weakness. How could everyone not be shocked? That Mo Junya's weakness is actually the same as all of you. It's a common problem for young people. He just can't keep his cool. Zhan Xingfeng smiled elegantly and raised his eyebrows slightly. The reason why I can't keep my cool is because I'm proud and arrogant. Most of these people would not allow themselves to retreat without a fight. Therefore, I believe that even though he knows there's a risk, he'll still come to the appointment. Even though he knew that he might be humiliated and beaten to the point that he couldn't have looked more miserable, he would still come. Zhan Xingfeng looked at everyone with a faint smile. If he really comes, don't say that he's stupid, because the most important characteristic of a top expert is to dare to face everything. Especially now, I believe that the older generation is certain that we absolutely won't dare to kill him, and he himself also knows that. So, since there's no actual danger, why doesn't he come? But if he comes, I'm afraid today's humiliation will follow him for the rest of his life. I'm afraid he won't be able to raise his head in the world. The things that we've set up, even I, the one who set it up, shudder at the thought of it. Could it be that he really dares to come and take on all of this? Zhan Yushu looked at the luxurious line-up beside him with uncertainty as he pondered. Of course, if he didn't come today, then he wouldn't be a threat in the future, because this was fleeing without a fight. To an ordinary person, this was not a big deal. But to a cultivator who aimed to reach the peak, it was a huge inner demon. Every time he faces a challenge, he will probably think of it. If he comes, it will only be a temporary humiliation. Moreover, today's meeting might become the motivation for him to endure hardships. But if he doesn't come, it will be a humiliation that he will never be able to wash away. I will never forget this for the rest of my life. Zhan Xingfeng said seriously. So, he must come. I have to come. So, the bet between me and Miss Meow has not really started yet. Naturally, there's no such thing as giving up a spot. Zhan Xingfeng smiled and looked around. All of you must be alert. Today, we are about to exchange blows with a rare, free, and natural physique. Regardless of victory or defeat, today's meeting will definitely be a memorable event. That's right, seeing this free and natural physique crumbling under our torture, it is indeed a delightful sight. Zhan Yushu laughed. Not necessarily. Before coming here today, grandfather had once said this. People with the free and natural physique are all geniuses amongst geniuses in this world. No matter what he did or learned, he would be very fast. Therefore, Grandpa once told me something. All the youths held their breaths. This sentence is, no matter what happens to people with the free and natural physique, don't be surprised, because he had the free and natural physique. If he can't do those shocking things, then that would be truly shocking. Zhan Xingfeng said, that young Master Mo is definitely a powerful opponent. You must not let your guard down. Big brother, if that lad really passes the test, are you going to give up the slot or not? Zhan Yushu asked carefully. Give up. Why not? It's just a spot. Could it be that we really care about it? Zhan Xingfeng snorted coldly and said, a man must keep his word. Since he has lost, he must admit defeat. A man's words are trustworthy. A man without his words is not a man of his word. How can he stand in this world if he does not keep his word? But if that lass really enters the spiritual herbal gardens, if she becomes the spiritual herbal gardens lord, then I will have even less hope. Zhan Yushu looked at his big brother and begged. Big brother, such a precious slot. Rather than giving it to an outsider, why don't you just give it to your little brother? Or we can just find a reason to reject that bet. Why so serious? How can such an important slot be decided by such a boring bet? This is too ridiculous. T. How is this bet boring? Zhan Xingfeng said angrily. Could it be that you are so sure that I will definitely lose? After saying that, he sighed. You only see beauty and nothing else. You. When When will you be able to see the big picture and become truly mature? Big picture? Zhang Yushu asked. Right now, although the younger generation of the Miao family is gradually declining, but among the older generation experts, the Miao family still occupies a considerable position in the Misty Mansion. Zhang Qingfeng said seriously. These people are not only shockingly powerful, they're also extremely patient. Zhang Yushu laughed heartily, but he was in awe of his big brother's careful choice of words. He was clearly scolding those people as old farts, but he had to say that they were very patient. This was truly scolding people without spitting out any vulgarities. Besides, if Mo Junyi really comes, although the outcome is still uncertain, our chances of winning are extremely high. However, our chances of winning are extremely high. We have at least a 90% chance of winning. Zhang Qingfeng spread out his fingers and curled one finger, causing the other 9 fingers to point straight forward. He looked at his fair fingers and said slowly, "But if he ends up in the end today, it's the same as not competing at all. Then, naturally, the bet can only be fulfilled after the competition." So that's the case. Big Brother's way of doing things is truly brilliant. This little brother is filled with admiration. Zhang Yushu was enlightened. Coincidentally, at this moment, there was a commotion at the entrance, followed by silence. An almost fawning voice said, "To think that little sister, Xiao Miao, has graced us with your presence. Please come in and have a seat." "Miao," Xiao Miao's voice said. "What are you being so polite for? I can go in myself." Following that, an elegant fragrance wafted through the air. Xiao Miao's slender figure had already walked into the hall. Looking at the situation, she couldn't help but laugh. Why is there such a big commotion? Isn't this making a big fuss over a minor issue? Even if everyone is very nervous about the bet, there is no need to go to such great lengths. Facing off against a rare, free, and natural physique possessor that only appears once in 10,000 years, naturally we have to choose the best venue. I believe that everyone would also be very careful. Zhang Qingfeng smiled warmly and said, "No matter who wins or loses, this is one of the rare opportunities to spar with a free and natural physique possessor. In these 10,000 years, there have only been 2 free and natural physiques. Little sister Xiao Miao, where is that prodigy with the free and natural physique? I heard that you guys were chatting together just now. Don't tell me that he doesn't dare to come." Although Brother Zhang's guess is not too far off. After hearing that you guys have set up such a grand welcoming ceremony, that prodigy was so scared that he doesn't dare to come. Just now, I almost dragged him here by force, but that fellow would rather die than submit, insisting on going home to sleep. Even if he doesn't come, I can't not come. After all, I'm also very interested in the welcoming ceremony here. As he said that, he pointed his finger at the surroundings of the hall and smiled lightly. This action was clearly saying that you guys had prepared for nothing. Even if you had prepared thousands of methods, is there any meaning without a target to execute them on? He's not coming? Although everyone was guessing whether the free and natural physique possessor would be scared to the point of not daring to come due to the sheer number of people gathered here, everyone had already come to a conclusion in their hearts. Honestly speaking, if they were in his shoes, they would definitely not come as well. It was too dangerous. But when they heard the news from Xiao Miao's mouth, everyone's emotions were still stirred up. F*CK. This bastard. He's actually not coming anymore. Is he still a man? Zhang Yushu's eyes flashed coldly as he said darkly, "So many of us are waiting here, and he's not coming just because he said he's not coming? What does he take us for? A target for him to toy with?" Zhang Yushu's words had successfully roused the anger of everyone present against a common enemy. Although they all understood the situation before them, and could even understand Mo Junye's choice, human nature had always been like this. It was fine to toy with others, but once it was their turn to be fooled, no matter what the other party's stance was, they would throw it to the back of their minds. Isn't that so? This damned Mo Junyi thinks that he has the free and natural physique and completely disregards us. Today's matter has humiliated us too much. We will definitely not let this matter rest. We will definitely not let him off easily. A youth in green said through gritted teeth. So what if he has the free and natural physique? With his trashy foundation, no matter how outstanding his talent is, his foundation is still too weak. At the very least, within 100 years, he will definitely not be able to catch up to us. In other words, we can at least trample on him for 100 years. A white-robed youth waved his fan and snorted. Even if he has the free and natural physique, in these 100 years, every day will feel like a year, and he will be treading on thin ice at all times. As for after 100 years, all of us here will already be in important positions. Even if he wants to take revenge, I believe he will have to weigh the pros and cons first. Even if he really dares to take revenge at all costs, no one will be willing to support him. This Mo Junyi, even if he can avoid today, can he avoid tomorrow and the day after? Will he continue to avoid forever? Today's actions have already offended all the young talents in the Misty Mansion. It's extremely unwise, Zhang Qingfeng lowered his head and frowned slightly. Why won't he come? There's no reason, why won't he come here? This matter is really very strange, Could it be that he's not afraid of planting a heart demon and suffering from a backlash in his future cultivation? This is incomprehensible, Could it be that he doesn't have the desire to become stronger? Chapter 9:37. But this was based on the premise that Mo Junye's cultivation was ordinary. How would Zhang Qingfeng know that Jun Dashao's cultivation had already reached an unimaginable level? And he did not even place the dragon's lair and tiger's lair that these young talents had set up in his eyes at all. This change was naturally out of Zhang Qingfeng's expectations, because no one would have thought that this seemingly trashy beginner Xianqi practitioner was actually a super expert in his bones. What's so hard to understand? Big brother Zhang, when you consider a problem, you always analyze it from a rational point of view. And this time, it's clearly this Mo Junye's ingenuity. Ha! Another black-robed youth suddenly laughed. Ingenuity? What do you mean? Everyone asked together. I'm guessing that this prodigy with the free and natural physique, because his foundations are too trashy, he probably doesn't even know what the so-called heart demon is. Why would he be afraid of the backlash of the heart demon? The black-robed youth squinted his eyes and said, Heart demon is a kind of obstacle that will appear when one's cultivation reaches a certain level and one's strength increases. And his current level of Xianqi. He furrowed his brows and pretended to be in deep thought. I wonder if he's a golden Xian or a silver Xian. Or is it a 7th, 8th, or a 9th level Xian? The moment he finished speaking, he directly clutched his stomach and burst out laughing. Everyone roared with laughter, and all of them were overjoyed. Obviously, they agreed. No, that's definitely not the case. Zhang Qingfeng raised his head and pondered deeply. Even if he really doesn't understand, how would Holy Emperor Chao not know? With the old man's cultivation, the first lesson he taught his disciple would be to inform him of all the things about the devil sect. Besides, there are still 2 of his companions here. He said he wouldn't come, and his life is in our hands. But he said he wouldn't come. This matter is really hard to understand. There must be another reason behind it. As for what the reason is, I'm not interested in guessing. However, young Master Zhang, it's time to end the bet we made earlier. Miao Xiao Miao, said Lang Lang. She didn't know why, but when she looked at these young talents from the Misty Mansion, she suddenly felt disgusted. There was no exception. He even felt more and more that these people were all so shallow. Compared to Mo Junyi, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. Bet? Zhang Qingfeng was deep in thought when he suddenly heard her words. He couldn't help but be taken aback for a moment before raising his head. That's right. The content of our bet was that you wouldn't succeed in humiliating him. Now, since he didn't come here, it doesn't matter what the reason is he didn't come. That means you guys have failed. Since that's the case, I should be the winner. That's probably it. Miao Xiao Miao said with a smile. Little sister Xiao Miao's words are interesting. The bet hasn't even officially started. How can you say that you've won? Before Zhang Qingfeng could say anything, Zhang Yushu had already spoken up with a cold smile. Besides, it's Mo Junyi who stood us up today. It's not like we're trying to go back on our words. It's still too early for little sister Xiao Miao to say that you've won. Stood us up. Meow Xiao Miao laughed coldly. I don't know where second young master said stood us up from. Which one of you made an appointment with him? You guys haven't even met each other, right? What appointment are you talking about? Today's matter is nothing more than your one-sided wishful thinking. Now that the other party didn't come, it's considered as standing us up? Is there such logic in this world? Meow Xiao Miao looked at Zhang Yushu disdainfully. Zhang Yushu, you're actually so familiar with this kind of one-sided wishful thinking. Don't tell me that you always do things like this. Zhang Yushu's face turned red as he said loudly, no matter what, just based on a battle that hasn't even started, you want to determine the winner of this precious bet? This is too much of a joke. We have no intention of going back on our words, but we have to wait until after the battle, right? Only then will it be fair. Meow Xiao Miao laughed coldly. Then I would like to ask, when exactly is the after the battle that second young master Zhang mentioned? Zhang Yushu, your words are really laughable. Since the other party still hasn't shown up, you guys have already missed the chance to humiliate him. Even if you guys don't want to give up and still want to compete with him, you'll need to find another opportunity. And this opportunity might be tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or next month. If you're unlucky, it might even be next year. It's not impossible. But the bet that I made with your big brother, the quota to enter the spiritual herbal gardens, is going to be decided in 5 days. Zhang Yushu, could it be that you want to use this bet to decide the next 100 years quota? Zhang Yushu's face was flushed red, but he couldn't say a word. Zhang Qingfeng smiled and helped his brother out of the predicament. Little sister Xiao Miao, although the bet is important, and I will not go back on my words, don't you think that it's a little unfair to determine the winner like this? Meow Xiao Miao was stunned. Looking at the warm smile on Zhang Qingfeng's face, she suddenly felt a chill in her heart. The so-called bet naturally has to have the basic principles of determining the winner. But right now, both parties have not started fighting, and you want to claim the final victory. Haha, little sister Xiao Miao. Although I'm usually generous, I'm not to this extent. Zhang Qingfeng laughed bitterly and said, Meow Xiao Miao suddenly felt enraged. Who would have thought that even this was predicted by Mo Junyi? Her original intention of coming here this time was to cancel the bet. With regards to this quota, it meant that she no longer had any hope of obtaining it from the bet. Although she felt a little regretful, she also felt a little gratified. The reason why she brought up the bet was merely to raise the topic, and then use the customer to ask for a few words to cancel the bet so that the Zhang family would owe her a huge favor. Even if they didn't owe her a favor, it would just be a joke, but she had never imagined that before she could say anything, the other party had already started to go back on his words. With Zhang Qingfeng's status as the #1 young master of the Misty Mansion, he actually resorted to sophistry to go back on his words. And he could still act so righteously. There wasn't even the slightest bit of shame in his eyes. Everything was clear, everything was open and above board. He could actually do this? How could he do this? Could it be that he could also take back the words that he had spoken? Going back on his own words, and he could still speak so eloquently. Meow Xiao Miao's heart was instantly filled with disappointment. She couldn't help but think of the words that Mo Junyi had warned her before she left. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to accept the loss, and the outcome is determined by the heavens. These are all pretty words on the surface. Actually, the key to victory is built on the fact that the other party is extremely powerful or has an absolute advantage. Only then will the other party admit defeat, and admit defeat when the outcome of the bet is clear. But if the interests involved are enough to affect some important factors, it is not impossible for both parties to go back on their words. So I advise Miss Meow not to place too much importance on this bet. In this world, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. 9 out of 10 things in life will not go your way. If you take it to heart too much, it will not be beautiful. It seemed like she had only smiled perfunctorily and left in a hurry back then. In Meow Xiao Miao's eyes, this young Master Mo's literary talent was indeed not ordinary. But to say such words in front of her, with the intention of slandering Zhang Qingfeng, this person's character was a little unbearable. She couldn't help but look down on him a little, and was even a little disappointed. After all, a narrow-minded person, even if he was extremely talented, was not worthy of being on good terms with. But looking at the current situation, that sentence actually made a lot of sense. Things changed with the passage of time. What seemed like slandering Zhang Qingfeng at that time was actually extremely prescient now. Right now, the situation could be said to be very clear, but that Zhang Qingfeng still refused to admit defeat. Then, even if Mo Junyi could really defeat all of them, he would still not admit defeat. Just as young Master Mo had said, in the face of benefits, the so-called morals and promises were not even as good as a piece of paper. Not to mention the spiritual herbal gardens, which concerned the safety of the family's prosperity for thousands of years. This was an absolute benefit. But the problem now was that if Zhang Qingfeng lost, he could choose to deny it, and she could not do anything about it. But if she lost in the end, they would definitely not let go and would definitely use all kinds of methods that they could and could not use to force her to submit. She was a young lady, and just based on the problem of reputation alone, she could not afford to be entangled with them. Miao Xiao Miao could already foresee that if the other party really gained power, they would definitely use this to force her to marry Zhang Yushu. Since they could do such a thing, then what other fantasies could she have about them? Miao Xiao Miao smiled faintly. For some reason, at this moment, there was not much anger rising in her heart. Instead, she thought of Mo Junye's ordinary face and thought to herself, "You're right. I've misunderstood you. It's my bad judgment." Mo Junye was very clear about these matters, and even did not hesitate to give his advice to her. But she had misunderstood him. Miao Xiao Miao suddenly felt very disappointed. No wonder young Master Mo seemed to want to say something, but hesitated. He had naturally thought of my reaction, but after thinking it over, he still said it. If not for that reminder, allowing her to be more or less mentally prepared, she would probably have flown into a rage right now. First, young Master Zhang is indeed resourceful and meticulous. Whether it's a step forward or a step back, you're able to advance and retreat with such ease. I was too naive about the bet earlier. Huh. Chapter 9:38. That Zhang Qingfeng, on the other hand, was rather impressive. Even in the face of Miao Xiao Miao's blatant mockery, he was still able to maintain his composure. Little sister Xiao Miao's words are too serious. I've already said earlier that the bet we agreed on has not even started, so naturally there will not be any results. Since little sister Xiao Miao has suggested to call it quits, then this foolish brother will fulfill little sister's wishes and end this bet. Actually, this is also good. It can avoid harming the friendship between us. From the start, he had been insisting on the words "the bet has not started." His meaning was clear. As long as the bet had not started, then he would not be considered to have gone back on his words. As for before, that was only a verbal agreement. It was not a big deal. Not only that, he even shamelessly claimed that he had sold Miao Xiao Miao a favor and called off the bet. Those who didn't know might even think that he was magnanimous and let her off easily because he had victory in his grasp. As expected, a person without shame is invincible. A faint smile appeared on Miao Xiao Miao's face as she said, "Young Master Zhang is truly magnanimous. This little sister will thank young Master Zhang for showing mercy. If young Master Zhang has the chance to spar with that young Master Mo in the future, this little sister wishes young Master Zhang a great victory." A trace of anger flashed across Zhang Qingfeng's originally warm and handsome face. With his intelligence, how could he not tell that Miao Xiao Miao was intentionally mocking him? But he did not say anything else. No one here was a fool. They all knew that he was in the wrong in this matter, and he had even acted shamelessly after the matter. Now that the other party had said a few words, he could only accept it. Otherwise, he would lose even more face. He could only suppress his anger in his heart and think to himself, "What a sharp-tongued little brat. This young master has no time to bother with you right now, so I'll let you be arrogant for now. Wait till you marry into the Zhang family. See how I'll deal with you then. Since the bet has already been called off, this little sister will take her leave." Miao Xiao Miao shook her head and sighed. "Initially, I thought that by coming here today, I would be able to watch a good show. I didn't expect the result to be so disappointing. My good mood for so many years has finally been completely destroyed. Meow Xiao Meow's tone was filled with heartfelt disappointment and melancholy. It was so strong that it seemed to have solidified. All these years, she had always thought that although the Zhan family was full of profligate young masters, this first young master of the Zhan family, and the publicly acknowledged first young master of the Misty Mansion, Zhan Qingfeng, was different from the rest. She truly treated him as a big brother. Even the so-called bet the day before yesterday was just a harmless little joke between the two of them. But today, in front of the so-called absolute benefits, Zhan Qingfeng's scholarly face had suddenly become so foreign that no one dared to recognize him. And this was Zhan Qingfeng's true face. So it turned out that everything from before was merely a method he used to conceal himself. There wasn't a shred of true feelings in it at all. Meow Xiao Meow felt heartbroken. Heartbroken from the bottom of her heart. She had always thought of him as a big brother, but in the face of benefits, he could actually betray her so completely. Speaking of which, women were all emotional creatures. No matter how intelligent they were, they could never escape this strange circle that was beyond reason. If one didn't experience it personally, they would never be able to understand the feeling of it. Meow Xiao Meow didn't manage to win the bet that she had clearly won today, but she had seen a person's true face and tasted the bitter fruit of emotions. As for the pros and cons of this, it was up to the individual to decide. Zhan Qingfeng pretentiously tried to persuade her to stay, but Meow Xiao Meow insisted on leaving. Young Master Zhan also felt that he had lost all face, so he didn't force her to stay. But just as Meow Xiao Meow was about to turn around and leave, a clear and joyful voice rang out. Ayaya, I heard that all the young masters had set up a banquet to entertain this little brother. Afraid of being rude, this little brother specially went back to change into a new set of clothes and immediately rushed over. Who would have thought that I would see such a grand occasion? This trip was not in vain. There was really no need for this trip. Following that voice, that legendary free and natural physique prodigy, Mo Junyi, young Master Mo, walked in with a face full of smiles and a face full of flattery. As he looked around at the dazzling array of decorations in the hall, he clicked his tongue in wonder and said in embarrassment, Ayaya, this standard is really too grand. All the young masters, all the brothers, haha. Actually, as long as everyone shows their sincerity, a simple gesture would do. Why is there a need to tear down the house? This really makes this brother feel very apologetic, ah? A cold glint suddenly shot out from Zhan Qingfeng's eyes. He was almost unable to restrain his anger. If you had come a step earlier, why would I need to be a despicable person in front of Meow Xiao Meow and everyone else? I wouldn't need to go back on my words and swallow back my own words. I could even make use of this country bumpkin to make Meow Xiao Meow lose the bet. Not only would I completely destroy Meow Xiao Meow's hopes of entering the spiritual herbal gardens, I could also make use of this chance to bring the number one beauty of the Misty Mansion into my harem. After that, I could use this as an opportunity to slowly swallow up the entire Meow family's forces. Just because this bastard had come a step too late, all my plans had become nothing more than an illusion. Right now, this fellow still had a face full of flattery and flattery. This was simply taking advantage of me and still acting innocent. This was truly intolerable. Intolerable. You are Mo Junyi? I am Zhan Qingfeng, the eldest young master of the Zhan family, and also the one who initiated today's welcoming ceremony. Zhan Qingfeng's gentle demeanor from before was completely gone. His face that was filled with a gentle smile, when he was facing Meow Xiao Meow, instantly turned into an icy cold expression. It was as if he had gone from spring, when flowers were blooming, to winter, when snow was flying everywhere. A cold glint shot out from his slender eyes as he stared fixedly at Jun Moxie, like a tiger staring at its prey. All the other young masters were also taking the opportunity to size up this legendary free and natural physique. They couldn't help but feel that it was better to meet him in person than to meet him in person. This brat's appearance was simply too ordinary. He belonged to the type that would be like a piece of carbon thrown into a pile of coal when thrown into a group of people, impossible to find again. It could be summed up in one sentence. Hearing about him in person is not as good as meeting him in person. But this kind of person was actually the legendary free and natural physique. In an instant, the contempt in everyone's hearts increased. Apart from the contempt, there was even more disdain and contempt. Miao Xiao Miao saw that Zhan Qingfeng's expression seemed to have suddenly put on another mask, and the surrounding temperature also seemed to have dropped a few degrees. She couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. I wonder how many layers of masks this number one young master of the Misty Mansion has on? A faint sense of fear suddenly rose in her heart. Apart from being emotional, girls also had another characteristic. Their thoughts were always very direct and even very subjective. When she saw a good person, then no matter what, no matter how he handled things, it would all be good. However, if there came a day when this person suddenly changed her impression of him, then all her previous efforts would instantly turn into an illusion. No matter what that person did after that, it would be extremely detestable, no different from a pile of stinky dog shit. She would even suspect everything that she had experienced in the past could all be a scam set up by that person. Therefore, some brothers would often inexplicably fall out of love, and when they met again, the other party would simply be gnashing their teeth even more than the enemy, looking at them with contempt and disdain, while they themselves would be confused, completely not knowing how they had offended their former beloved. Actually, this was a very normal thing. Women often didn't even understand the thoughts of themselves, much less men who weren't women. However, when Miao Xiao Miao saw that Jun Lo Ta Xiao had a look of shock and fear on his face, she almost burst out laughing. This fellow's acting skills were really good at acting like a dragon and acting like a tiger. He really looked like whatever he was acting, truly imitating it to perfection. That expression was like a country bumpkin who had suddenly entered a big city and obtained the recognition of a big shot. It was the kind of expression that a country bumpkin would have when he was acting. 10,000 points of acting skills. Yes, I. Big Brother is Mo Junyi, the owner of the free and natural physique. The legend in your hearts. Everyone, you don't have to be too envious. Even if you are envious, you won't be able to obtain it. This Mo Junyi seemed to have wanted to keep a low profile at the start, but for some reason, he changed his mind. It was as if he felt that he was already on the same level as these people, or even a head higher. He couldn't help but be pleased with himself and immediately corrected his mistake. Not only did his tone become more arrogant, he even started to call himself Big Brother. In the end, he even started to speak incoherently, directly reaching an extremely arrogant level. All the young masters were infuriated by the words of this country bumpkin. It wasn't that they hadn't seen arrogant people before, but they had never seen someone as arrogant as this. This Mo Jun, you was really an arrogant person. To think that the legendary free and natural physique would actually fall into the hands of this kind of person. The heavens were simply blind, But young Master Mo's next sentence almost caused Zhan Qingfeng to faint from anger. But Zhan Qingfeng, that young Master Zhan, he had a difficult expression on his face. What is it? Zhan Qingfeng suppressed the rage in his heart. Young Master Zhan, it seems like you haven't been doing very well in the Misty Mansion, right? I can tell that when you announced your name earlier, you were very proud, as if you felt that you were very famous. Actually, I can understand your feelings. Young Master Mo shrunk back a little and said embarrassedly, ever since I came to the Misty Mansion, I've basically met all the important people. Some especially important ones. Holy Emperor Chao would also specially point them out. So this little brother has a very deep impression of all these important people. But I don't think I've heard of young Master Zhan's name. Looks like you haven't been doing very well in the Misty Mansion, right? Is it similar to how I am outside? AI. Everyone is not doing very well. It's really hard to make a living in the world now. I pity you really from the bottom of my heart. Now that I've finally made a name for myself, I can definitely protect you. Do you understand what I mean? Chapter 9, 39. Just now, he had spoken in an extremely arrogant tone, directly introducing his name and background in a lofty and arrogant manner. His goal was naturally to take the free and natural physique down a notch. This was a tactic to subdue the enemy without a fight. As long as the other party showed the slightest hint of surprise, Zhang Qingfeng would disturb him mentally. He had never imagined that the other party had really not heard of his name at all. He even thought that he was doing rather badly, and even consoled him in a condescending and pitiful manner. This unexpected turn of events made Zhang Qingfeng feel as if he had punched empty air. Could it be that he, the great young master of the Zhang family, was also going to be protected by someone? Zhang Qingfeng practically wanted to tear this free and natural physique youth into pieces on the spot. The other party had a look of innocence on his face, but this was the most vicious attack against someone like Zhang Qingfeng, who was extremely arrogant and prideful. Miao Xiao Miao almost burst out laughing, but she forcefully held it in. She could tell that if this Mo Junyi didn't manage to beat every single person here into a pulp, he would definitely not leave. Audacious! Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to Big Brother Zhang like this? That green-robed youth took a step forward and pointed his finger at him. What did I say? I find this Brother Zhang very pleasing to the eye. Why don't I promise to protect him? And I wonder who this young master is? Young Master Jun looked at him with interest and suddenly said enviously, "Wow, brother's clothes are really beautiful. It's so green, so nice to look at. Young master, when you stand out, it's as if I've suddenly seen the bamboos in the mountains. The air is really fresh, Jun Moxie said regretfully. The only pity is, although this young master is dressed entirely in green, there's still some imperfection. He looked left, right, up and down, sizing up the youth. What's the flaw? The green-robed youth asked angrily. The only flaw is that it's a pity that your hair is black. If you could also wear a hat of the same color, it would naturally have the effect of adding the finishing touch. It would definitely be able to shake the entire misty, illusory manner in a single night and become an immortal legend. You can think about it. You can do it. The green-clothed youth instantly understood the meaning behind the words of the person in front of him. His whole body trembled, and he was so angry that he wanted to step forward and strangle this bastard to death. Wearing a hat of this color? It was green. F***CK. You're the one who's being cuckolded. Your whole family is a cuckold. Damn it. Do you think I can't tell? I believe everyone knows that I have the free and natural physique. However, this young Master Mo's following words caused the crowd's lungs to explode. I also understand. Brother is the legend in your hearts. He swung his sleeves proudly in a pretentious manner, shaking his head and turning his neck in a circle. Then, he said proudly, although brother is not in the pugilistic world, but the pugilistic world is filled with legends of brother. The burden of fame, brother is actually very low profile, really very low profile. Everyone had the urge to vomit blood at the same time. Looking at the smug look on this fellow's face, as if he didn't know how much he weighed, complacent and shameless, it seemed that if it wasn't for the thing hanging down from his crotch, this fellow might have already flown up into the sky and soared into the sky. In that moment, everyone was panting heavily. All of them wanted to rush forward and press this shameless fellow to the ground. F***king him, then F***king him again and again, and then F***king him for 100 years. This fellow was really too shameless. Young Master Mo is right. The current you is indeed the legend of the Misty Mansion, the only legend. Zhang Qingfeng sucked in a deep breath and said, however, all of us have a common trait, and that is that we are very pragmatic. We don't believe in any legends. Naturally, if there's any legend who thinks that he is a legend and wants to stand above us without any achievements, then no matter what kind of godly abilities this legend has, we will have a taste of it. Only when we are convinced can he truly become a legend, an immortal legend, and naturally become the #1 person of the younger generation in the Misty Mansion. Zhang Qingfeng's tone was heavy and oppressive. Ling Ling said slowly, young Master Mo, I believe that you will understand and agree with my words, right? Agree. Of course I agree. You are too right. This free and natural physique prodigy nodded with a face full of smiles. Then he scratched his head. But young Master Jean said something about a legend. That legend. What is going on? What does it mean exactly? I'm very sorry. I'm actually not very literate, although I'm confident that I'm also very talented and knowledgeable. But, young Master Jean, were you saying a tongue twister or a rhyme? It sounded very smooth, but it was a little roundabout, and I didn't quite understand it. Why don't you repeat it again? Ha ha. Meow Xiao Meow seemed like she really couldn't take it anymore and finally burst out laughing. This guy was fooling everyone, but his expression was so real, so perfect. Genius, best actor, if there were such things in this world. You didn't understand? What a good, talented, and knowledgeable, Let me explain it to you. What my big brother meant was that in the Misty Mansion, there's a trashy character who's like an idiot. He's an idiot in his bones. And it's just that he had some dog-T luck. The heavens gave him a good body, and he actually wants to use this dog-T luck to stand above us. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, and he's so arrogant. We naturally have to teach him a good lesson. Jean Yushu came over and said in an extremely dangerous tone, F***CK. Who is that person? A trash who relied on his body to climb up, and he's actually so daring. This Mo Junyi had a face full of righteous indignation as he rubbed his palms together and even spat into his own fist. He said with a murderous aura, beat that idiot to death. He actually dares to look down on my brother Jean. This is simply intolerable, As he spoke, he took 2 steps forward and came before Zhang Qingfeng. He patted Zhang Qingfeng's shoulder sympathetically and sighed. Brother Jean, I understand. I finally understand your situation now. It's really tragic, Even an idiot looks down on you. It can be seen what level you've reached, As he spoke, this great young master, Mo, patted his own chest, causing a pa-pa sound to ring out. His heroic spirit reached the clouds as he said, but it doesn't matter. Those are all in the past. I believe that that kind of situation will never happen again. Ha ha ha, because I'm here. I, Mo Junyi, am here. I've arrived with the legendary attitude of a king. From now on, you're under my protection. I guarantee that you'll have a good life, and even a large amount of pocket money. He stomped his foot and gritted his teeth as if he had made up his mind. If those idiots still dare to look down on you in the future, don't stand on ceremony. Big Brother is here. Big Brother is very good at teaching idiots. As he spoke till here, Zhang Qingfeng's face had already turned green. But Jun Mo Xie was not done playing around. He patted Zhang Qingfeng's shoulder and sighed. Today, in order to curry favor with me, you actually held such a grand banquet and even tore down your house. Although Big Brother knows that you're beating your own face until it's swollen to act like a fatty, I'm still touched by you. Don't worry if I don't stand up for you. Wouldn't I be too heartless? What? This idiotic genius actually wants to open a banquet here and even wants to take the #1 young master of the Misty Mansion as his lackey. Everyone was speechless. This fellow can't be a brainless idiot, right? Zhang Qingfeng's eyes were also starting to glaze over. 3 black lines appeared on his forehead, and his eyes were getting more and more malevolent. He had always prided himself on being a gentleman and paid great attention to his image. But right now, he felt that he could no longer endure it. He had never been humiliated like this before. Even an idiot is looking down on you. It could be seen how miserable you are. Following this, no matter how they insulted him verbally, this prodigy of the free and natural physique was truly worthy of the word prodigy. With just a casual sentence, he directly changed the topic to Zhang Qingfeng. Everyone was originally scolding him, but in the end, it was as if everyone was racking their brains to think of vicious words to attack Zhang Qingfeng. This fellow was truly shameless. No wonder he was the only prodigy in the past 10,000 years. After an unknown amount of time, everyone finally confirmed that it was impossible to deal with this legendary free and natural physique prodigy with just words alone. Although this fellow looked like a fool, it didn't seem to be true. This fellow was simply pretending to be a fool. From the beginning, he had been pretending to be a fool. The current situation was very delicate. It was as if he had something to say, and I had something to say. If you scold me, I'll scold you. If you scold me vaguely, I won't use any vulgar words. If you fight me directly, I'll also throw a tantrum. Jun Daxiao was having the time of his life. Mo Junyi, put away your pretentious tricks. This young master no longer has the interest and time to talk nonsense with you. Zhang Yushu panted heavily as he sat down and took in a deep breath of fresh air. Looking at his big brother's expression, he regained his composure. You are the legendary possessor of the free and natural physique. The moment you came to the Misty Mansion, you received the adoration of all the seniors. All the seniors are very fond of you. This is your advantage, and we don't have it. We admit this, and there's no way to deny it. This is your innate advantage. Although we are envious and jealous, there's nothing we can do about it. We can only say that you're lucky. Chapter 940. When not convinced, the entire Misty Mansion should not revolve around you alone. Even if you have the legendary free and natural physique, it's not enough. Zhang Yushu's speech was clear, his expression calm, and his analysis of the pros and cons was spot on. There was no trace of his previous impatience. It was clear that his earlier agitated scolding was all an act. Not only did he clearly point out the crux of the conflict between everyone and Jun Moxie, he even used a very subtle method to slowly stir up everyone's emotions. He wanted to stir up the anger and resentment in the hearts of these young masters to the greatest extent, then gather all their forces and rise up together. If it was just one person or one family, it might not be enough to shake the position of the free and natural physique possessor. But almost all the younger generation of the Misty Mansion's major powers were gathered here. Could it be that the upper echelons of the Misty Mansion would offend all the future pillars for a single person? Among us, there are those who cultivate Xian Qi at godly speeds. There are those who are resourceful and far-sighted, devising strategies to determine victory from 1,000 miles away. There are those who are skilled in the art of music, unparalleled in the world. There are those who are skilled in calculation, unparalleled in the art of calculation. There are those who are skilled in chess, never losing a single game of chess. There are those who are outstanding in the art of literature, composing poems in 3 steps and writing a chapter. Even if they have 1,000 words to say, they can still be relied on. There are those who are skilled in painting with a brush in hand, beautiful mountains and clear waters. There are those who are skilled in management, those who are skilled in battle. The more Zhang Yushu spoke, the faster he spoke, and the more agitated he became. The hall suddenly fell into an extreme silence, and only his voice could be heard. Everyone was staring at him with glowing eyes. Everyone's faces were glowing, and their breathing quickened. Finally, Zhang Yushu roared. There are so many talents here. Which one of them is not a heaven-defying genius? Which one of them isn't an outstanding talent? Which one of them isn't conscientious and diligent, hoping to receive the favor of their ancestors, so that they can get what they've been looking forward to for so long? But in the eyes of the real big shots, it's not worth a glance. Why is it that the moment you come, without any achievements, you can obtain all these things that we've been looking forward to for so long so easily? What's more, those things will naturally be delivered to you. You're just going to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor without putting in any effort? Why? Everyone tell me, are you convinced? Are you all willing? Zhang Yushu suddenly turned to face everyone and asked loudly. We can't accept this. We can't accept this. They were all saying the same thing. His voice was loud and clear, reverberating for miles. Right now, Zhang Yushu's face was no longer as calm as before. His voice was hoarse, and his eyes were bloodshot. However, Jun Moxie could see it very clearly. This guy was purely pretending. These people that he spoke of might exist, but the benefits that they were after were definitely not what Zhang Yushu had described as positions and benefits that were not worth a second glance in the eyes of those truly powerful people. With their status and identity, why would they be after some small benefits? But Zhang Yushu's impassioned speech was able to incite the fury of these people to the greatest extent. Let these people, who originally only had a little bit of resentment in their hearts, slowly expand and take form. From a 30% unwillingness to accept this to 100% hatred. Through this speech, he had completely pushed himself to the opposite side of these people, turning himself into the target of public criticism. Even if he was the possessor of the free and natural physique, if he was really ostracized by all of them, he would probably only be able to silently cultivate in the days to come. Become a lone ranger. Zhang Yushu's words and schemes could be said to be ingenious and brilliant, but his actions were destined to fail, because he had missed out on something very important. All of his plans were based on a single premise. It was based on the premise that this free and natural physique, Mo Junyi, in front of him was truly just an ordinary person. But Jun Moxie did not care about them at all. With Jun Daxiao's cultivation, he only needed to raise his hand to annihilate all of these talented youths and future pillars. Why would he care about them? The ants were roaring at the dinosaurs, challenging them. Would the dinosaurs accept the challenge? Would they be afraid? Besides, once he reached his goal of obtaining the 7 colored holy fruits, he would naturally retreat immediately and leave the Misty Mansion. Why would he stay here for a long time? To fight for whatever so-called resources. This was truly the greatest absurdity in the world. After we go out, this brother will remove his disguise. I'm still Jun Moxie, evil monarch. As for you little fellows who are fighting for a woman's favor, do whatever you want. This young master really has no interest in dealing with you. If not for my own ultimate goal, why would this old master be interested in playing with you here? Who do you think you are? Jun Moxie was still smiling faintly, his expression unchanged. He stared fixedly at the group of youths around him. These youths' eyes were all red from the agitation, and some of them were even trembling slightly. Clearly, they were extremely agitated, and their gazes towards Jun Moxie seemed like they were about to spit fire. This was especially so for the few people who seemed to be the most agitated. Their robes were not very bright, and 1 or 2 of them were clearly very clean. Their robes were even a little shabby. It was obvious that their family background was not very good. With a single look, Jun Moxie could tell that the ones who were going to compete with him were probably these poor disciples. Only they were the ones who had truly given up everything in exchange for the chance to gain the recognition of the Misty Mansion. That was why they were so furious that the free and natural physique possessor had snatched away the resources that originally belonged to them. So indignant, Jun Moxie could not help but feel some pity in his heart. These bunch of fools. Did they really think that as long as I wasn't around, they would be able to obtain what they wanted? One must know that this world had always been unfair. Reality was never a fairy tale. Whoever fantasized about seeking justice in this world would be the most pitiful person. Actually, the ones who were the most unfair to them were the ones who were watching the show with a face full of indignation. When they needed it, they had to be their tools. But when they no longer needed it, what did they count for? Their ancestors and fathers had built up their foundations, and they had everything they had now. If Mo Junyi relied on his innate talent to reap without sowing, then what right did these rich second generations have to be superior to him? Didn't they still have to rely on Zhu Ming's care? Wasn't that also reaping without sowing? Who was more shameless than the other? If it was said that the poor disciples hated Mo Junyi out of jealousy, there was no one who hated the rich second generations around them. Who was really ignorant? A scholar from a poor family could be a county magistrate or a small official. But as long as he was not a founding hero, how many scholars from a poor family could become high-ranking officials or loyal officials in the court? Foundation, that was the enormous accumulation of life after life. If a person without a background worked hard for his whole life, he might be able to climb to the position of a county magistrate. If his son worked hard for his whole life, he might be able to reach the position of a prefectural official with the help of his father's connections. If his grandson also worked hard, he might be able to reach the position of an inspector with the help of his grandfather and father's connections. And this was only under the most auspicious and smooth circumstances. He could only reach this step. If he had a great-grandson, he would have the opportunity to enter the court and become one of the few people in the world. But at that time, would he still be a so-called poor disciple? Or would he no longer be a poor disciple from the moment he became a county magistrate's grandfather? Although this was not a pure hereditary system, it was a more realistic hereditary system. No matter what kind of social system it was, this phenomenon could never be changed. The father was a hero, and the son was a good man. This was the absolute truth. But there must be a prerequisite. If you want your son to become a good man in the future, then you must first become a hero yourself. So this bunch of poor disciples gathered here, instigated by Zhang Yushu and the rest to deal with him, was just their wishful thinking. After this matter was over, if the free and natural physique was really suppressed as they wished, who would still remember that they had once fought against these free and natural physique people here? To Zhang Yushu and the rest, what a waste of brain cells. If they were unhappy, or if they needed someone to take responsibility for the premature death of the free and natural physique, then wouldn't these people be the best scapegoats? Even if there was no need for scapegoats, even if they were just giving these people something out of a moment of happiness, that was the real benefits and duties that were not worth a second glance in the eyes of the big shots. It was like a person eating in a restaurant, throwing a bone that he didn't want to eat to a stray dog by the roadside. That was all. Why would Mo Junyi, who had the free and natural physique and was the darling of the entire Misty Mansion, care about something like that? That was something even trashier than trash. But even if it was a bone like that, to these people, it was still a rare opportunity. So dealing with him was just because Zhang Yushu and the rest were unhappy with him. But it still concerned the future of these people. So although they had no enmity with him, they still fought against the darling of the Misty Mansion without any hesitation. And these young masters who grew up in rich and powerful families had long mastered the art of trickery. From a young age, they had already learned how to make others swear loyalty to them and work for them, how to use others as a tool, how to use the least amount of effort to obtain the most benefits. They could even hide behind the scenes, treating everything as a game in the palm of their hands, letting others fight for it until their heads bled and their lives were in danger. They were just sitting on the fishing platform. Even if the flames rose to the skies, it wouldn't burn them at all. Jun Moxie sighed in his heart. Because of the lamentable nature of these people, and because of the helplessness of this world. Chapter 941. And Miao Xiao Miao, who was standing quietly a distance away, looked at the situation before her. It was developing in a direction that was not favorable to Mo Junyi. Everything seemed to be under the control of the two brothers of the Zhang family. A hint of worry finally appeared in her eyes. She understood that today's matter was no longer just a simple humiliation. What they really wanted was to leave a permanent mark of failure in the heart of this free and natural physique prodigy. Their only goal was to completely destroy this free and natural physique prodigy. Even if they couldn't destroy him, they wanted to completely destroy any chance of him entering the core of the Misty Mansion now or in the future. So many people were making things difficult for him at the same time. Among them, there were many talented people. Even if he was a great talent, even if he was a perverted prodigy, how could he possibly win? Not to mention anything else, his Xianqi cultivation was the weakest amongst everyone present. Even if he didn't count Xianqi, even the 9-nether first young master from 10,000 years ago would not be able to defeat all these people in their area of expertise. Second young master Zhang, you've said so much, but I still don't understand. You're even better at beating around the bush than your elder brother. Just tell me, what do you want? Jun Moxie was finally getting impatient. Great prodigy, Mo. I don't care if you're pretending to be dumb or really dumb. I'll tell you directly. Our intention is very simple. I'm here to seek justice from you, the heavens' favored one. Zhang Yushu shouted righteously. We will definitely not allow you, who appeared out of nowhere, to plunder everything that originally belonged to us. We want to snatch it back. Snatch back our rights. Snatch back what we've been pursuing all our lives. Oh, I understand now. You guys are jealous that the seniors of the Misty Mansion think highly of me. Why didn't you just say so earlier? What's the point of going through so much trouble? Haha. Then, how you intend to snatch it back? June Sia laughed instead, a look of interest in his eyes. Looking at the agitated Zhang Yushu, he thought to himself, this fellow really knows how to act. At this time, he's probably already immersed in his role. He's also an actor. Looking at Zhang Qingfeng, who was sitting there with a gloomy face, he thought to himself, no wonder the Zhang family could have a place in a misty, illusory manner. As expected, they have successors. Just the two brothers before him, Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu, both of them are not easy to deal with. The two brothers' intelligence, wisdom, scheming, and shrewdness were all first-rate. It was a pity that they didn't put this material to good use. Instead, they were obsessed with scheming and fighting for power. If the Misty Mansion were to collapse in the future, then the cause would be the Zhang family. These two brothers were actually ambitious and ruthless people. When two tigers coexisted, how could they work together? Looking at the 5 or 6 youths sitting around him, although they were all filled with anger on the surface, their eyes were calm and tranquil. These young masters of the aristocratic families were indeed not simple at all. Great Prodigy Mo is a straightforward person. Since you're so straightforward, we won't make things difficult for you. You've just arrived, and your xianqi cultivation is not high. We naturally won't compete with you in martial arts, because that would be purely bullying you and would be unfair. We're even more disdainful of doing such tasteless things. Even if we want you to lose, we want you to lose wholeheartedly. Zhang Yushu said with a righteous and reasonable face. But other than xianqi, as long as you work hard in other areas, you will definitely have considerable achievements. Look at these people here. No matter which one of them is older than you by a few years, they've all developed to a certain level in their various fields. Some of them have even reached the level of a grandmaster in a certain field. Their achievements can be said to be remarkable. As he spoke up to hear, a few people's eyes shone with pride and arrogance. But all of their faces were calm, as if they weren't talking about them. They were very reserved. Their talents are naturally far from your free and natural physique, but they can still have their current achievements. And you have the unparalleled free and natural physique. I believe there's no reason why you can't do the same. But you've easily snatched away the resources that they've worked hard for their entire lives. So we want to compete with you. This kind of feeling is really too aggrieving. Jun Moxie cursed in his heart. F***CK. If this daddy wasn't a transmigrator, wouldn't I be toyed to death by you? Although all of them had achieved remarkable achievements in their respective fields, it was all because of their focus. 10 to 20 years of focus on one thing. As long as one wasn't as stupid as a pig, there would definitely be some results. But you want me to compete with so many people at the same time in something that everyone is proficient in? Isn't that a joke? If this isn't bullying, then what is bullying? Other than Jun Moxie himself, a transmigrator with 5,000 years of civilization, no one in history would be able to do this. Even if the 9 Nether First Young Master, a true free and natural physique holder, came back to life, facing so many challenges, he would also be helpless. Of course, if the 9 Nether First Young Master really came back to life, the most likely scenario would be to knock everyone down with a single slap. Not convinced? Then kill them all with a single slap. The Zhang family really had it all planned out. Meow. Xiao Miao almost cursed it out loud. You better not agree, ah. Once you agree, you'll be consigned to eternal damnation, ah. When Zhang Yushu said this, Zhang Qingfeng coughed lightly, and Zhang Yushu immediately changed to them. To us, this change was very small, and most people didn't notice it. But Miao Xiao Miao's eyes flickered, and Jun Moxie even had a faint smile on his lips. Miao Xiao Miao looked at the two brothers warily, the wariness in her heart growing thicker. Just the tacit understanding between these two brothers was already something that could not be underestimated. As the saying goes, a mountain cannot contain 2 tigers, and a country cannot contain 2 rulers. Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu, these two brothers, were both formidable and ambitious, but they were able to work together flawlessly. Clearly, the relationship between these two was very good. This matter looked simple, and it was reasonable for brothers to be close. But in reality, it was very rare, especially in a wealthy family. Such a thing happening was simply unimaginable. The fights between the descendants of the aristocratic families were not inferior to the royal family. Killing one's own brother and killing one's own father was not a rare thing. Just this point alone made the Jean family a level higher than the other aristocratic families. I must definitely tell grandfather about this when I return. But right now, June and Monsieur was thinking about something else. So it turns out that these two brothers have different goals in the misty, illusory manner. Only in this way could there be no conflict. To talk about brotherly love in such a large family was simply a fantasy. Then, since their goals were different, then their goals were very clear. One of them should be interested in the authority of the Misty Mansion, and the other should be interested in the main Jean family. This was the only possibility that June Moxie could think of. In fact, June Moxie was 100% sure that his guess was absolutely correct. The Jean family indeed had huge ambitions. It was no wonder that they had to use the quota for the elixir garden in this seemingly boring bet. But if Jean Qingfeng wanted to enter the spiritual herbal gardens to fight for the position of garden lord, then Jean Yushu would have to take on the responsibility of inheriting the entire Jean family. But if that was the case, then what about the position of the manor lord with the highest authority in the Misty Mansion? Could it be that the Jean family had no ambitions for this position at all? Regarding this, June Moxie would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. Then, the matter was very simple. But this simple fact was something that even a wily old fox like June and Monsieur would jump in fright when he thought about it. Could it be that the Jean family had another peerless genius hidden within? Even more intelligent and resourceful than Jean Qingfeng and Jean Yushu. Able to completely subdue these two brothers of the same clan who were the cream of the crop in terms of intelligence and scheming. Perhaps this was the only way to explain this incomprehensible phenomenon. That was why Jean Qingfeng and Jean Yushu had to settle for the next best thing. The Jean family was really awesome. June Moxie's mind raced, and he instantly understood all of this. When he looked at Jean Qingfeng and Jean Yushu again, there was a hint of caution in his eyes, carefully traversing the world. Otherwise, even an unparalleled hero would fail miserably in an easy task. Although June Moxie had always been arrogant on the surface and even looked down on the world from the corner of his eyes, when it came to the meticulousness in his heart, no one could compare to him. And in this period of time, Jean Yushu had also listed out the conditions of the competition. After you compete with us once, regardless of whether you win or lose, we will all admire you as a man and acknowledge the position you have in the Misty Mansion. Acknowledge the position? Who are you lying to? Do you even believe these words of yours? June Moxie was filled with disdain in his heart. No wonder your Jean family would be so interested in me, a free and natural physique possessor, to the point of risking everything to scheme against Mo Junyi. So it's because you're afraid that great prodigy Mo will snatch away what you want or obstruct your plans. After all, a free and natural physique possessor was like a ticking time bomb. No one knew when he would suddenly explode and become an existence that could threaten anyone. Right now, June Moxie had finally found out the motive behind the Jean family's provocation. June Dashao had even deduced that other than the main motive, the Jean family was also planning to make use of this provocation to pick out potential investors from the commoner disciples and pull them into the Jean family's camp, to become the private strength of the Jean family. After this matter, these people would have completely offended the free and natural physique prodigy Mo Junyi, as well as the Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng and the other upper echelons of the Misty Mansion. Coupled with the Jean family's threats and promises, it would be a piece of cake for the Jean family to recruit them. Chapter 942. It was a pity that such a meticulous plan was destined to fail, because the Jean family just had to meet this imposter, June Moxie. Moreover, this imposter also had an endless amount of energy The brilliant plan that the Jean family had painstakingly prepared was like an unstoppable torrent, but it suddenly crashed into the tallest pillar of heaven's mountains in the world, destined to be a tragedy. This was really like the old saying, man proposes, God disposes. June Moxie felt that the old ancestors' words were too king reasonable. The things in this world were really too king miraculous and ridiculous. Is it really just a single round of competition? That's simple? June Moxie asked without batting an eyelid. Of course it's not that simple. Jean Yushu revealed a smile that he thought was very bright. Actually, it's not a big deal. That is, since there's a competition, then there's naturally a bet. And this wager is what we truly want. Bet? You guys actually have conditions to compete with me? June Moxie asked. Of course there are conditions. If there are no benefits, wouldn't we have wasted so much manpower and resources for nothing? Without an equivalent bet, it would be letting down great prodigy Mo's legendary status. Jean Yushu's face turned serious, and he said slowly, the conditions are also very simple. No matter which category you are in, as long as you lose, you're not allowed to touch any resources in this field for the rest of your life, whether it's your position or resources, etc. For example, if you lose in painting, you are not allowed to mention the word painting for the rest of your life. It's the same for other areas as well. Jean Yushu smiled and said, other than that, you also have to promise to agree to 3 conditions. 3 conditions that you cannot refuse no matter what the request is and no matter what the situation is. That includes anything. If you have no objections, we can immediately make a contract. On it, there will be our signatures and handprints, and we will swear on our ancestors' souls that we will never go back on our words. Jean Yushu's face turned cold. Of course, if great prodigy Mo doesn't have the guts, feel free to leave and the competition will be over. However, I must solemnly reiterate that if this competition is successfully completed, we will not make things difficult for you regardless of the final outcome. But if you run away pathetically, I, Jean Yushu, swear on the honor of the Jean family that there will be no place for you, Mo Junyi, in the misty mansion. Even if you have the free and natural physique, the result would be the same. Jean Yushu chuckled. At that time, you only had 2 paths. First, in the misty mansion, becoming a cripple or directly dying, turning into ashes. Second, you can return to the outside world to beg for food. Return to your beggar identity. You aren't a fool either. Even if you haven't seen our Jean family strength, you should have heard of it. Think about what you should choose for yourself. Jean Yushu, you're despicable. Miao Xiao Miao panicked. How could such a condition only ruin Mo Junyi? It was practically tying 3 shackles on Mo Junyi that could never be undone. Once this condition was set, once Mo Junyi lost, it was equivalent to becoming a slave of the Jean family. You must not agree. You must not agree. These 2 brothers of the Jean family were too sinister. June Moxie snickered in his heart. I'm not afraid of you raising conditions. I'm only afraid that you won't raise conditions. As expected, they finally revealed their fox's tail. The Jean family schemes were truly deep and far-sighted. Not only did they have designs on the Miao family, Miao Xiao Miao, the spiritual herbal gardens, and the position of the manor lord of the Misty Mansion. They even had designs on the families of these youths here today, on these commoner disciples who were participating in today's competition, and they even had designs on Mo Junyi, the future #1 expert of the Misty Mansion. This was truly too awesome. As for those conditions, it was completely a smokescreen by the Jean family. Because for a free and natural physique, the main goal was still the level of xianqi cultivation. What zither, chess, calligraphy, poetry, and songs? To him, it was completely meaningless. Even if he was allowed to participate, he would not have any interest. That was just a method to win the hearts of the people. But it was better than nothing. The real conditions were the 3 conditions that could not be rejected at any time and no matter what conditions were raised. This was where the real highlight of the show was. Furthermore, the Jean family would definitely not raise these 3 conditions now. It was a long-term investment. When this free and natural physique cultivator's cultivation reached a certain level and showed the potential of a peerless expert, but had yet to truly reach the peak, then they would raise these conditions. If they raised it too early, they would be worried that their cultivation would not be sufficient and they might not be able to unleash their full potential. If they raised it too late, they would already be a peerless expert who could completely disregard the existence of a Jean family. At that time, even if there was a letter of blood, it would be useless. They could just kill the entire Jean family to silence them. In this world where the bigger fist made the most sense, this kind of thing was too common. Only at that critical moment, which was neither too high nor too low, would it be the most suitable and easier to control. Jun Moxie put himself in the Jean family's shoes and thought about it. He couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. If it was him, the first condition would be for this peerless expert with a free and natural physique to kill an important person in the Misty Mansion, causing chaos and even panic in the Misty Mansion. The second thing would be to kill the Manor Lord, and the third would probably be to join the Jean family. These three moves could be said to be closely linked with each other. First, killing an important person who was not on good terms with them would naturally mean that both parties would be on good terms. But because of this, the Jean family would have a hold on him. At the second step, they naturally had no choice but to do it. If they did the second step, there would be no turning back. Apart from joining the Jean family, there would be no other place for them in the entire Misty Mansion. After that, even if Mo Junyi became an invincible existence in the future, he would definitely not be able to turn against the Jean family. In this way, not only would the Jean family be able to obtain a future #1 expert in the world, they would also be able to firmly grasp the entire Misty Mansion in their hands and pass it down for generations to come. Despicable? These were just the stakes and conditions of the bet. The choice is in Brother Mo's hands. Brother Mo can choose to agree, but he can also choose not to agree. The right to decide is not in my hands. How am I despicable? There's no loss when there's a bet. Who knows? The great prodigy Mo might win. Didn't you hear Brother Mo say that he's a legend? Zhang Yushu smiled gently and said, "Little sister Xiao Miao, it's not important how you do things. What's important is what's the result. The so-called despicable means in the eyes of the world can also be done in an open and honorable manner. And some open and honorable means can often be used as a smokescreen for despicable purposes. As for the secret behind it, other than the person involved, no one else will be able to guess it." When he said this, Zhang Qingfeng coughed lightly again, clearly hinting to him not to say too much to Miao. Xiao Miao, do you think that I don't know your motive? Zhang Yushu, you're using such a method to deal with the free and natural physique that all the seniors in the Misty Mansion hold in high regard. Isn't your Zhang family afraid of incurring the wrath of the masses? At that time, can your Zhang family bear the wrath of all the seniors? Xiao Miao looked at Zhang Yushu. Her usually calm eyes were actually filled with a rare fury. Our Zhang family is wholeheartedly for the sake of the Misty Mansion. Even if we set up this bet, we will not do anything that goes against the heavens. This I can swear to the heavens. Besides, little sister Xiao Miao, this competition is only a bet between us juniors. Didn't you also participate in a similar bet earlier? Do you think that the stakes of the bet you participated in would be that much smaller? Zhang Yushu snorted and said with a smile that was not a smile. Miao Xiao Miao was exasperated. She was just about to speak when she saw Jun Moxie raise his head in deep thought. "Second young master Zhang, I understand what you're saying. But this condition of yours, doesn't it seem a little too unfair? From the start to the end, only if I lose, you are allowed to raise conditions. Then why don't you say, if I win, what will happen? Could it be that only you are allowed to raise conditions if you win, and I have to work hard for nothing? A bet needs to be fair. If Brother Mo is able to win in the end, you are naturally allowed to raise conditions." Zhang Yushu's expression was clearly as if he was joking. Everyone at the side couldn't help but laugh out loud. This Mo Jun Yi is really too funny. Facing so many top-notch talents from all walks of life at the same time, he actually intends to win all of them? He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Of course I will raise conditions, June Moxie said seriously. And I've already thought of the conditions. Since your conditions are so harsh, then my conditions cannot be so easily either. Don't you think so? Oh, what conditions do you have? You can state them. Jean Yushu squeezed out a smile and asked unhappily. This country bumpkin really doesn't know his place. Brother Amo, you must be careful. This is not the first time these two brothers of the Jean family have gone back on their words. Miao Xiao Miao saw that he had the intention to agree and couldn't help but panic. She couldn't be bothered about being reserved and completely disregarding offending Zhang Yushu and Zhang Qingfeng. Miao Xiao Miao. Zhang Qingfeng, who hadn't spoken for a long time, called out sternly. What do you mean by that? Chapter 943. To think that I've treated you like my own sister, and you're slandering me like this? Just based on a bet that hasn't even started, and you're saying that I'm going back on my words? Zhang Qingfeng's eyes were filled with pain as he said sorrowfully, Little sister Xiao Miao, how can I, your brother, endure such words? Young Master Zhang, I'm no longer that little kid of the past, Miao Xiao Miao said lightly. And you're no longer the big brother Zhang of the past. Saying all this now is after that incident, and I've witnessed your scheme with my own eyes. Do you think that I'll still believe you? Good, good. Zhang Qingfeng sighed and did not say another word. Miss Miao, please relax. Although I don't dare to boast that I'm well-versed in everything, but I do know a thing or two about the arts of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Although I've only studied for less than 3 years, I feel that I'll be able to handle it. You don't have to worry about me. They've raised 3 conditions, and I'll also raise them later. Since you're so concerned about me, how about I share one condition with you after I win? June Moxie's words caused everyone present to burst into laughter. This fellow really knows how to boast too much. He really doesn't know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is. I've seen arrogant people before, but this is the first time I've seen someone who's so arrogant. This fellow is even more arrogant than the legendary June Moxie and the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Then please tell us your conditions, Brother Amo. Who knows, maybe Brother Amo will really win. Zhang Yushu pursed his lips, suppressing the urge to laugh maniacally as the corners of his mouth twitched. I heard earlier that Miss Miao had a bet with young Master Zhang. From the looks of it now, that bet has been cancelled. My conditions are somewhat similar to Miss Miao's, but also somewhat different. June Moxie said blankly. The first condition is that I want the right to enter the spiritual herbal gardens, and I want the Zhang family to guarantee that I can enter. If it's just a verbal promise, you won't believe me, and I won't believe you either. I want both of you brothers to sign a blood oath together. On it, you have to swear in the name of your Zhang family's ancestors and descendants. No matter what means you use, as long as I win, you must ensure that I enter the spiritual herbal garden. Most importantly, you're not allowed to affect Miss Miao's quota, because this time, I'm going to accompany her. Apart from that, I also want everyone present to write a certificate of audience. If anyone doesn't keep his promise, all 8 generations of his ancestors will suffer in hell for all eternity. They will never be able to transcend reincarnation. In the future, they will have children. The men will be prostitutes, and the women will be endless. June Moxie chuckled and straightforwardly stated his first condition. Furthermore, it was such a vicious restriction. This condition of his looked simple, but the restrictions within it were even stricter than what Zhang Yushu had set for himself. Hearing such a cruel oath, everyone's face changed color. Not only did it implicate their ancestors, but it also involved their descendants. This was an oath that no one dared to make, an oath that no one dared to violate once it was made. At their level, they all knew that there were too many unexplainable things in the unseen world. There were too many existences that they couldn't see or think of. The theory of ghosts and spirits might not be completely groundless. It was not uncommon for oaths to come true. Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu looked at each other. They could see the conflict and worry in each other's eyes as well as that uncontrollable rage. An oath that guarantees the rights of both parties. You don't dare to make it? Why are you so hesitant? June and Moxie looked at the two brothers. But you were the ones who came to me first, wanting to compete with me. You did not allow me to retreat, and even raised so many harsh conditions. Why? Now that I'm raising the conditions, you're all mute. Didn't you say that you want to bet on justice? Although the conditions are difficult, they are also valid reasons. This is naturally understandable, but isn't it a little too vicious for you to make an oath other than the conditions? Zhang Qingfeng furrowed his brows and said viciously, Also, why do you want to enter the spiritual herbal gardens? Nothing much. I was just bored and couldn't think of any good conditions. How could I be as prepared and far-sighted as you guys? Why, this young master heard that the place is not bad and wants to go into play. Or is it that your Zhan family can't do it? June Moxie laughed coldly and said, As for the oath, one speaks according to the type of person one speaks to. If it's a gentleman, why would there be a need for an oath? It's just a verbal agreement, and everyone can rest assured. He looked at Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu from the corner of his eyes. But the two of you, I don't trust you. I don't trust you at all. You even dare to act shamelessly against a lady like Miss Meow, let alone me. I'm only asking for a guarantee. The two brothers snorted at the same time, but the two of them were completely helpless against Mo Jun Ye's questioning. The conditions that Zhang Yushu had raised earlier were all beneficial to the Zhan family. He had long cast aside everyone else. All the youths from the other families were looking at the two of them with gloating expressions in their eyes. They were waiting to see how the two of them would reply. As for those commoners, they had even less of a right to interrupt. The quota to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. Would these two brothers dare to agree? Everyone could see that they were deliberately making things difficult for Mo Junyi. Apart from those idiots who were provoked by the Zhan family, most of these young masters from the other families were just here to watch the show. Why would they be afraid of the matter blowing up? The bigger the matter, the better it would be. Although the free and natural physique's influence was weak now, his future was limitless. They did not really want to offend him. And the Zhan family's influence was also at its peak in the Misty Mansion. They also did not want to offend him. In fact, they could not afford to offend him. So even though these people appeared to be very angry on the surface, they still abided by one thing. They could put on an expression, and they could also put on a good front. But if they really offended great prodigy Mo, they would not say a single word. Because this great prodigy was a true prodigy, as long as they maintained a neutral stance, no matter how the situation developed, they would be able to curry favor with Mo Junyi or the Zhan family. Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu were indeed in a dilemma. The quota to enter the spiritual herbal gardens, even the manor lord of the Misty Mansion, could not just give it to anyone, not to mention their Zhan family. And if they really swore a blood oath here in front of so many people, with so many people as witnesses, they would definitely not be able to go back on their word. Then if they lost, it would mean that the entire Zhan family's strength would have to be mobilized, including those chess pieces that have been hidden for hundreds of years. Only in this way could they fight for the right to enter the spiritual herbal gardens for Mo Junyi. And it was only a possibility. But the moment they mobilized all their strength, it would still not bring any benefits to the Zhan family. Apart from exposing their immense strength, they would not even gain a single cent. And they would not have any relationship with Mo Junyi, because they were the ones who lost the bet. Although Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu were both representatives of the younger generation of the family, and their statuses were extremely important, this matter concerned the future of the entire Zhan family. Even they would not dare to make such a promise in private. The promise this time was definitely different from the bet between Zhang Qingfeng and Miao Xiao Miao. There was no way they could go back on their word. Even if they did not consider Mo Junyi's immense potential, there was still the Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng and the other 6 Holy Emperors behind him. Which one of them was easy to deal with? The two brothers could not help but curse this Mo Junyi in their hearts for being a troublemaker. To think that he would come up with such a painful condition. The situation was clearly in their favor, but with just a few words from this brat, It had turned into a situation where they could not back down. But this was the method they had used to coerce Mo Junyi earlier. Right now, the other party was using their own methods to counter them. It was like using their own spear to attack their own shield. This plan was even more brilliant. The affairs of the world were truly unpredictable. The Jean family's goal was very clear. But the other party clearly did not care about the quota to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. It was only because the Jean family needed it that I had to fight for it, so that I could go in and have some fun. This reason that came up with so casually was truly enough to make one vomit blood. Furthermore, the Jean family was fighting for it for him, and they had to fight for it. So even when June Moxie asked for the third time, the two brothers still did not dare to agree. This matter was too serious. Whoever dared to agree would be an idiot. But if they did not agree, dragging it out was not a solution either. If they did not agree, the competition would not be able to proceed. Then the entire plan would be ruined, and all the Jean family's plans would be for naught. And because of today's matter, they would completely offend Mo Junyi and all the people behind him. They would offend the future strongest expert in the Misty Mansion, and they would not be able to do anything about it. Just thinking about it was enough to make one's head hurt. But agreeing with such serious consequences, who would dare to agree? This was really making things difficult for him. Why? Why don't you swear? As long as you swear, the competition can begin anytime. The choice is in your hands. If you're willing to swear, I will naturally be at ease to compete. On the other hand, I have no interest in signing some blood oath with people who have no integrity. Why are you so hesitant? As long as you do not go against your oath, there will not be any problems. So what if your oath is a little more vicious? Don't tell me you have the intention to go against your word from the start. Jun Dashao asked coldly. Chapter 944. You're still trying to argue your way out of this? As long as you don't go against your oath, what's there to be afraid of? Also, are my conditions really that harsh? I've directly put the conditions on the table, but your conditions are 3 conditions that you can't refuse at any time. Everyone here is a discerning person. Let me ask you, whose conditions are harsher? What did your second brother say just now? Didn't he swear on the reputation of the Jean family that if I avoid this battle, there will be no place for me, Mo Junyi, in the Misty Mansion? Speaking of tyranny, who is more tyrannical? June Moxie continued to pursue. I didn't mean it that way just now. I was afraid that Brother Mo wouldn't accept the challenge and made a slip of the tongue. The Jean family has elders and brothers. What right does Jean Yushu have to represent the Jean family? I definitely didn't mean to threaten Brother Mo. However, today's battle no longer concerns the Jean family. It concerns the future of the entire Misty Mansion. Even if Brother Mo wants to avoid this battle, it's all in vain. Why be a despicable person? Jean Yushu was rather sharp, instantly changing the topic. Despicable person? Who is the despicable person here? I believe everyone here is very clear. I'll just reiterate one point. As long as you are willing to accept my conditions, the battle can begin immediately. I'll say it again, the decision lies in your hands. I also understand that the reason why you're hesitating is because you know that you don't have enough weight. At least you have some self-awareness. June Moxie laughed coldly. I said that the two of you are just small characters in the Jean family that can't even be shown in public. You guys still refuse to admit it, and even kept on praising the Jean family to me. Now, just a mere qualification to enter the spiritual herbal gardens, and the two young masters don't even dare to agree to it. To think that you were still bragging just now. I really wonder how many of the promises you've made before can actually be fulfilled. Tui. Right now, Jun Dashao was completely unforgiving. He looked at the two of them with an extremely disdainful gaze, as if he was looking at a pair of paupers who couldn't even pretend to be fatty, even if their faces were swollen. Then what conditions do you two brothers still want from me? Are you worthy? Aren't you ashamed of raising conditions to a person with a free and natural physique who has never been seen in history? You want to take advantage of this genius? It was like a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. You've really misunderstood me. In an instant, there was a commotion. The Jean brothers' faces were flushed red, but they were helpless and helpless. Now, it was obvious that they had made things difficult for the other party, and the other party had agreed. However, they didn't dare to agree to the conditions set by the other party, or perhaps they didn't have the qualifications to agree. Since they didn't have the qualifications, then what was it if they proposed a duel and added so many harsh conditions to the other party wasn't a joke? It was a living example of a toad lusting after the flesh of a swan. In the opposite restaurant, two old men were quietly sitting in the room opposite them. In the middle of the room, a sandalwood incense was slowly burning. Green smoke rose in spirals. Compared to the noise on the opposite side, there was only silence here. This little fellow with the free and natural physique is indeed not an ordinary person. I'm afraid Yu Shu and Qing Feng will definitely not be able to get any benefits from him. One of the old men closed his eyes and said softly, "These few years, the two brothers have indeed been too successful in their actions, and it's inevitable that they think too highly of themselves. This time, it's also a good chance for them to train themselves a little." The other old man sat cross-legged, not even lifting his eyelids as he said, "But this condition, from your point of view, what do you think? Do you agree or not?" The old man from before looked at the ordinary face of Mo Junyi. At this moment, the owner of this face was cursing at the two young talents of the Zhang family, saying all sorts of nasty things, causing the two of them to turn purple, but they couldn't do anything. Actually, there's no harm in agreeing to this condition. The old man still did not open his eyes. The reason why Yu Shu and Qing Feng don't dare to agree is because the implications are too great and they don't have the authority to make the decision. That's why they don't dare to agree. You must know that something like authority can determine a person's boldness. But from another point of view, it doesn't matter even if we agree to this condition. Just like what this Mo Junyi said, as long as we win, it doesn't matter what oath we make. And that brat definitely has no hope of winning. The old man said lightly, "So what if we make an oath now?" After a while, when the outcome of the battle was clear, who would remember this matter? Even if someone remembers, they will only praise Yu Shu and Qing Feng for their courage. They even dared to agree to such a condition. This is actually beneficial to the two of them. But what if they lose? The old man from before asked worriedly. Anything is possible. It's impossible for them to lose. The cross-legged old man finally had some expression on his face. His lips curled into a sarcastic smile. Furthermore, even if Luong loses, it's just a slot to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. Our Zhan family might still be able to fight for it. What's the harm in letting him enter once? Even if he is lucky enough to obtain the affinity of the holy tree, then it's only the Miao family losing power. This is also a good thing for our Zhan family. Because of this, the Miao family will also be standing against that brat. Even if this brat goes against us in the future, but for at least 300 to 500 years, he will not have overwhelming strength. If we discover that something is amiss, wouldn't it be a simple matter for our Zhan family to get rid of him? Right now, our biggest target is only the Misty Mansion, not the free and natural physique. We need to be clear about this. If we can't even do this, then what's the point of talking about doing something big? Yes, you are right. The old man from before looked about the same age as this person, but his attitude was extremely respectful. It was completely the attitude of a junior in front of an elder. But this free and natural physique is definitely not as simple as a cultivation genius. We need to strengthen our control over this person. After saying this, the old man closed his eyes. The old man by the side agreed after some thought. Then, his lips moved slightly, sending a voice transmission to Zhan Qing Feng. "Good. We agree to this condition." Zhan Qing Feng immediately put on an infuriated expression and stood up. "I believe there are still 2 more conditions. Just state them all. Dragging the time will only make me look down on you." But he secretly heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. So the old ancestor is here today. Then, today's matter can be considered settled. But he also felt a little dejected in his heart. My performance just now was seen by the old ancestor. I wonder if you will be disappointed in me because of this. Good resolution. June Moxie applauded. Actually, the second condition is not that big of a deal. It's even simpler. That is, if I win, the two of you need to kneel down and kowtow to me 10 times and call me Grandpa 10 times. You. Zhang Yushu's eyes turned red with anger. What kind of condition is this? Although your Xianqi cultivation is not high, with your free and natural physique, you could be considered as someone with status in the Misty Mansion. Why would you propose such a despicable condition? We agree. Zhang Xingfeng interrupted Zhang Yushu and looked at June Moxie fiercely. As long as you can win. Although this condition was more embarrassing, it was not something difficult to accept. Naturally, they had to agree to it. Great. As for the third condition, it's also simple. I'll copy your method. If I win, I can make any request to the Zhang family. No matter what it is, you must agree to it. You must do it. And there is no time limit for this request. I'll mention it whenever I want to. Why don't I mention it? I won't mention it even if you beg me. June Moxie completed all 3 conditions in one go. It could be said to be extremely difficult, but it could also be said to be very simple. This condition won't do. You're all alone and don't have many attachments. But our Zhang family has countless attachments. If you want the entire Zhang family to commit suicide, do we have to listen to you? Zhang Yushu's eyes rolled, and he immediately called out. You're all so afraid of death. Even if I make that request, it's useless. June Moxie shook his head and said, Do I look like such a stupid person to you? Not only do you look like it, but you are. The 2 brothers cursed in their hearts. Now that the conditions had been settled, the next step was to find a witness. Naturally, there were already witnesses. There were descendants of 6 out of the 8 great families in the Misty Mansion. Adding on Miao, Xiao Miao, 7 heavyweight witnesses were born. Every one of these 7 people had an extraordinary cultivation base. They had all reached the supreme martial artist or beyond supreme martial artist. Although this level of cultivation might not be enough in the eyes of real experts, it was already very commendable considering their age. Adding on the powerful forces behind them, it was not an exaggeration to say that they were heavyweight witnesses. In order to show that it was completely fair, Miao Xiao Miao specially ordered everyone to find the top experts from all walks of life to come forward as witnesses. In order to prevent all these people here from being bribed by the Zhang family, Miao Xiao Miao directly invited 10 more people at once. As a result, the scene of this competition between the playboys was so grand that it couldn't be any grander. There were actually 17 witnesses, and any one of them could be ignored. Zhang Yushu looked at June Moxie and snorted proudly. Hee hee. June Moxie looked at the Zhang family brothers and also snickered sinisterly. Both sides felt that victory was in their hands and were secretly gloating. Everyone in the hall perked up. A good show was finally about to begin. Following that, someone went to fetch the 4 treasures of the study: brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Miao Xiao Miao wrote all the terms and conditions of the competition. Schwa, schwa, schwa. The brush moved like dragons and snakes, instantly appearing on the paper. Zhang Yushu and Zhang Xingfeng could not wait any longer. They immediately swore a vicious and cruel oath, biting their fingers and writing it down in blood, leaving a bloody handprint. Following that, the free and natural physique young Master Mo also did the same. The bloody letter in the hall instantly increased the sinister and tense atmosphere of this competition. Chapter 945. Everyone knew that this competition concerned the future of these few people. No matter which side lost, they would be worse than dogs in the eyes of the other side. In fact, they wouldn't even be able to raise their heads in the Misty Mansion anymore. Words were no proof, and words were written as proof. And all the words were written in blood. And there were 17 leaders of different professions as witnesses. Both sides had no room for regrets. No one would have thought that the interests involved in this competition would actually be so great. The few talents that the Zhang family had found were already regretting their decision. Since they were able to reach such a high level in their professions, they were naturally not fools. If they had known that it would be so serious, they wouldn't have come no matter what. It was just a moment of anger that caused them to lose their heads, and they were even mesmerized by the illusionary future that the two brothers of the Jean family had outlined, causing them to come. Looks like they were in a dilemma today. If they won, they would definitely offend this free and natural physique prodigy. Thankfully, Mo Junior's current strength was still weak, so it wasn't too serious. And the most important thing was they seemed to have offended Meow, Xiao Meow as well. Offending Meow, Xiao Meow was equivalent to offending the entire Meow family behind Meow, Xiao Meow. They couldn't bear the consequences of this. But if they lost, they would be offending the Jean family. At that time, all of them would probably die a horrible death. Could it be that they were stuck in a dilemma? Die if they advanced, or die if they didn't? When June Moxie was signing the blood letter, Meow, Xiao Meow asked anxiously, "Are you confident?" Young Miss Meow had already made up her mind. If he said that he wasn't confident, then she would immediately cause a huge ruckus here, beat up all these people, and even burn down the shop. Even if she was being unreasonable, she would still mess up this matter. June Moxie looked at her and said softly, 100%. These two words caused Meow, Xiao Meow, to stomp her feet angrily, scolding him countless times in her heart. Idiot. Egomaniac. But there was nothing he could do. He could only watch anxiously as this guy signed his name in a relaxed and proud manner. But unexpectedly, he felt a sense of security in his heart, as if he was certain that the idiot and the egomaniac in front of him really had the strength to turn the tide and stand proudly above everyone else. But how could this be possible? In the hall, 17 tables were arranged in 2 rows. Meow Xiao Meow, who was also the notary, sat in the middle. The other unrelated people were directly driven 30 meters away, and they were completely reduced to spectators. Even Zhang Yu Shu was no exception. The only one who was allowed to watch from a close distance was Zhang Qingfeng. On the other hand, the bunch of scholars looked at each other in dismay. Who would be the first to fire the cannon was a problem that needed to be considered. If he won the first battle, then everything would be fine. But if he lost, it would be the same as giving up his life immediately, no matter how they thought about it. No one was willing to be the first to stand out. Looking at the person with the free and natural physique who was sitting leisurely in the center, everyone felt extremely aggrieved. Why was it that all of them were standing, but he could only sit and wait? But he had to deal with so many of them, and he was fighting for himself. What was the point of them standing there for? Young Master Mo, I am Lin Qingyin. I am willing to be the first to seek guidance from young Master Mo. I hope that young Master Mo will not be stingy with your guidance. Just as everyone was looking at each other, unable to make up their minds, a green-robed youth who had been standing at the back of the group all this while walked out silently and spoke to June Moxie. Lin Qingyin, what an elegant name. Looks like Brother Lin should be from a musical family, right? Not bad, not bad. Could it be that Brother Lin wishes to compete with me in musical skills? June Moxie looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. That's right. I am extremely ashamed, but this one has never cultivated in Xianxi before. The only thing I can take out is that I have some experience in music. Lin Qingyin said calmly. This time, there are 2 reasons for me to deal with Brother Mo. Firstly, I am a little unconvinced in my heart. Secondly, I have a reason that I have no choice but to come. After this matter is over, no matter who wins or loses, I, Lin Qingyin, will never see Brother Mo again. Otherwise, the feeling of guilt in my heart is truly too unbearable. June Moxie smiled lightly and said, Looks like you have some misgivings in your heart. You must know that music is the voice of the heart. If you do not put your heart into it, it will be hard for you to reach the peak of music. But there's no need for you to do so. You could just treat it as making friends through music. At the very least, that's what I think right now. Just based on the words music is the voice of the heart. This Lin already knows that Brother Mo is a master of the music world. A pity that time is not with me, and there's nothing I can do. Lin Qingyin laughed bitterly. Suddenly, his face turned serious, and he said, There's no point in speaking so much nonsense. This one had a sudden inspiration a few days ago and came up with a song called Heartbreak Him. I hope Brother Mo will not be stingy with your guidance. As he said that, Lin Ching-een flipped his sleeves and a dark green jade flute appeared in his hands. He lowered his head and gently caressed the dark green jade flute in his hands. Although Ching-een comes from a 1,000-year-old musical family, the only thing I'm most familiar with is the jade flute. It's also the only skill I know. I've already spent a full 26 years on this flute. This jade flute is the love of my life. It's also the only thing I've ever pursued in my entire life. Other than the flute, I have nothing else to ask for. In other words, you only know how to play the flute? As for the other musical instruments, you're not proficient in them? In fact, you don't even know how to play them? Jun Moxie asked. That's right. I've already said that other than the flute, I have nothing else to ask for. Lin Ching-een raised his head, his eyes clear. Respect. Instead of learning from others, it's better to specialize. It's a pity that not many people understand this logic anymore. For Brother Lin to be able to understand this logic, I'm truly impressed. Looks like the competition today will be far more interesting than I expected. Jun Moxie's expression also turned serious. Brother Mo is indeed a soulmate. Lin Ching-yin's eyes lit up as he looked deeply at Jun Moxie. Then, he turned his head and looked at Zhang Yushu. Young Master Zhang, after this battle, regardless of the outcome, I hope that young Master Zhang will keep his promise and not make things difficult for my Lin family. Only then will Ching-een give it his all. I hope that young Master Zhang will agree to this. The moment these words came out, everyone was stunned. So this Lin Ching-een was actually threatened by Zhang Yushu. Zhang Yushu snorted coldly. My Zhang family has always been open and above board. When have we ever gone back on our promises? You can rest assured. Could it be that you want me to write a blood oath for you as well? Lin Ching-een nodded. I don't dare to. I hope that second young Master Zhang will keep to his words. Lin Ching-een thanks you here. After this battle ends, this Lin will immediately take my leave and travel to the ends of the world with my family. In this lifetime, I will never come back to Heart Fantasy City again. Young Master Zhang can rest assured. Zhang Yushu snorted coldly and did not say anything else. He'd truly lost all his face today. But as long as he won the battle, all the losses would be worth it. Meow Xiao Meow let out a deep sigh. In truth, young Miss Meow really wanted to speak up and intervene. Although she did not know what had happened, there was no doubt that Zhang Yushu had used underhanded methods to force Lin Ching-een to submit. To think that someone from the Zhang family would actually do such a thing. He believed that as long as he promised to ensure the safety of Lin Ching-een and his family, he would be able to force them to explain the reason behind his actions. Perhaps he would be able to turn the entire bet around. But after much consideration, he decided not to say anything. Could he really guarantee the safety of Lin Ching-een and his family? Perhaps the Meow family behind her could. But how could the Meow family be willing to offend the Zhang family, who was currently at the peak of their power, for a mere musician? Even if the Zhang family was despicable, shameless, and despicable, so what? As the saying goes, the winner takes all. As long as the Zhang family emerged victorious today, no one would bother about how they won. After Lin Ching-een received Zhang Yushu's affirmation, he knew that the other party would not go back on his word since he had already agreed to it in front of so many people. Turning around with a relaxed expression, he bowed deeply to Jun Moxie. Brother Mo, this one will use this jade flute to seek guidance from Brother Lin on the art of music. Please. Lin Ching-yin's green robes fluttered in the wind as he stood in the middle of the hall. He did not start playing immediately, instead remaining motionless for a long time. After a long time, an indescribable sorrow surfaced in his eyes, but his expression was calm. The jade flute in his hand was finally lifted up slowly, and with every inch that the flute was lifted, the sorrow in his eyes deepened. By the time the first mournful sound of the flute rang out, the sorrow in Lin Ching-yin's eyes had already reached a point where it could not be dispelled. Yet, his expression remained as calm as ever. The melodious sound of the flute rang out in the air above the hall, causing everyone who heard it to involuntarily feel a heaviness in their hearts. regardless of whether they were well-versed in music theory or not. They felt an inexplicable pressure, as if the person they cared about the most had left them forever, and that regret was something that could never be made up for in their entire lives. It was a pain that was difficult to describe with words. No matter how high one's Xian cultivation was, or how one's mental state was, everyone was attracted to this tune. This was completely different from the soul assimilation technique or Xianqi cultivation. It was purely the power of music. Music could be said to be a miraculous skill. It could always evoke the most sincere emotions in a person's heart. As the melody of the flute grew deeper and deeper, Jun Moxie could clearly feel the helplessness and sorrow in the depths of Lin Qingyin's heart. At this moment, he could clearly hear what this young master of a musical family had gone through. Amongst the judges present, there was a famous musician. But when he heard this sorrowful tune, his face involuntarily turned gloomy as he sighed repeatedly. Sitting in the middle of the hall was Miao, Xiao Miao. Her face was covered by a white veil, and her expression could not be seen. However, there was a hint of sorrow in her eyes, and her lips were moving slightly. If anyone could read her lips, they would definitely be able to see that Miao Xiao Miao was currently reciting. The flowers in the forest have withered and turned red, too hurried. Helpless, the cold rain comes in the morning, the wind comes in the evening. Rouge tears, leaving one drunk. When will it be over again? Chapter 946. The song had ended, but Lin Qingyin was still standing there in a daze. His expression had not changed at all, and only his eyes were filled with confusion. The jade flute was still by his lips, and he was still in the posture of playing the flute. The sorrowful aura around him did not dissipate at all. There was complete silence. After a long time, Lin Qingyin finally put down his hands. With a completely disheartened expression, he turned to Jun Moxie and said, "Brother Mo, for this first round, I do not request for Brother Mo to compete with me in playing the flute. Instead, I would like to ask Brother Mo, how is my heart-shattering chant? Where are the flaws? Who was it written for? If there are any regrets, how can it be remedied? From now on, where will my path be?" When Lin Qingyin said the words, "I do not request for Brother Mo to compete with me in playing the flute," Zhang Yushu's expression tightened, and a sinister look flashed across his eyes. But when he heard the next few words, his expression immediately calmed down. From the way he heard it, these questions of Lin Qingyin were simply purposely making things difficult for him. Everyone had their own stories in their hearts, and they would be struck by inspiration. Only then would they be able to compose something, using a song that he had just heard. He asked who this song was written for. This Mo Jun, he had never even seen Lin Qingyin before. How would he know who it was written for? If this wasn't purposely making things difficult for him, then what was it? As for the flaws and how to remedy them, that was even more ridiculous. Zhang Yushu had always prided himself on being a talented young man, and he was also rather knowledgeable in the Tao of music. He felt that this song was the best he had ever heard in his life. Such a good song, and yet he was asking about the flaws. If he really had to ask about the flaws, then other than the composer himself, everyone else's mental state was completely different from his. When it came to composing, the slightest difference in one's mental state could make a world of difference. How would Mo Jun know? And the last question, where would his path be in the future? This was even more difficult. You are someone who is always focused on learning music. Could it be that your path is still Xianqi? But when he asked this question, it was as if he did not wish to continue in this field anymore. If that was the case, then it would be hard to say. Looks like this fellow still did not forget my warning. I want to see how this Mo Juni handles this round. Zhang Yushu couldn't help but feel a little smug. Actually, it wasn't just Zhang Yushu who thought this way. Everyone else, regardless of whether they were knowledgeable or not, had the same thoughts. In that moment, the way they looked at Lin Qingyin was filled with admiration. This fellow was truly a dog that knew how to bite. Not only did he not bark, he even knew how to gain the goodwill of others before biting down viciously. Just one bite was enough to be fatal. Then, Looking at the free and natural physique genius who seemed to be deep in thought, everyone began to gloat. Let's see how you will reply. In fact, the audience was already feeling a little regretful. Such a grand scene might have ended in just one round. There was nothing more to see. A look of amusement appeared in the eyes of the music theory expert on the stage. What these people did not know was that although Lin Xing looked like he was deliberately making things difficult for them, he was actually going easy on them. This was something that those who did not immerse themselves in music would not understand, because everything was told to Jun Moxie by the sound of the flute. Whatever Jun Moxie heard, he only needed to say it out loud, and he would pass. This song, Heartbreaking Chant, is indeed not bad. It is indeed a rare song. If we look at it from the point of view of the song itself, there is no mistake at all. A song that breaks one's heart. Where in the world can one find a soulmate? It can be said to be perfect, Jun Moxie said slowly. Only, if we look at it from the point of view of the song's artistic conception, it will be a little biased. As Jun Dashao spoke up to hear, the music expert on the judging panel was already visibly moved. His bright eyes stared at Jun Moxie's face, not blinking at all, afraid that he would miss out on the rest of his words. The so-called song is nothing more than the emotional sustenance of us performers. Regardless of whether it is sadness or happiness, or even rage or slaughter, it can all be expressed through music. However, other than expressing the performer's own emotions, the performer also has to be responsible for all those who have heard the song. A truly good song is one that is joyful but not obscene, sorrowful but not hurtful. After listening to it, one's body and mind will feel relaxed and at ease. Even if it is a sorrowful song, the intent is to evoke the same feelings in the hearts of those who listen to it, thus reducing the pressure on their hearts. Brother Lin's song is sorrowful, but it also causes those who listen to it to feel extremely stifled. After listening to the song, one could not help but feel a sense of hopelessness and despair. But it is completely different from the original meaning of the Tao of music. Although it is not the exact opposite, it still feels as though it has gone astray. Jun Moxie smiled lightly. It can be said that the most successful aspect of this song is also its biggest flaw. Well said. On the judging panel, the old man exclaimed excitedly. The others who were more knowledgeable also nodded their heads in agreement. Such a statement was not only accurate, it also hit the nail on the head, hitting the nail on the head. Lin Xing thought deeply for a moment before nodding his head slowly. Then, since that's the case, how should we remedy it? Remedy? It could be simple or difficult. Jun Mo Xie said indifferently. I'm not contradicting myself. It's just that this song is the voice of the heart. I've also said that this song has reached a state of perfection. There's nothing wrong with it. The real problem is your state of mind. Such a sorrowful song, yet your expression remained unchanged from start to finish. From this, it can be seen that you played this song with a state of extreme despair. The name, Heartbreaking Him, already represents its true meaning. The so-called remedy is to change your mental state. As long as you change your mental state, the concept will change as well. If you're unable to change your mental state, any remedy would be meaningless. This is also the true meaning of what I said earlier. It can be easy or difficult. You might say that if you change your mental state of despair, you would lose the original meaning of this song. But I'd like to ask you, is life really so hopeless? Why not try from a different angle? Try changing your mental state of despair into longing. That should be enough. I believe that the person who could make you compose this song wholeheartedly must have a very deep relationship with you. Furthermore, there must be many beautiful memories between the two of you. These memories are your most precious treasures, treasures that no one would be able to invade or plunder. If you were to think of these past events while playing this song, and even infuse those emotions into the song, I believe that it would definitely be different. At that time, we would only be able to hear sorrow and longing and not despair. Only in this way can the Heartbreaking Hymn be called a flawless song. It will allow Brother Lin and the person you're longing for to never be forgotten. Lin Xingyin stood there in a daze, his eyes glistening with tears. As for who it was for, I've already vaguely mentioned it earlier. Brother Lin, if I'm not wrong, this song should have been written for your lover. Jun Mo, Xiao looked at him warmly and said, and this lover of yours should have passed away due to an accident. It's not because the grieving person has other hugs. Otherwise, there should be resentment and hatred in your song. Since there is no such thing, the conclusion can only be. Lin Xing let out a long breath and closed his eyes, muttering as if he was in a dream. Not bad. Brother Mo is right. So what if the song is perfect? A song that breaks my heart. Where can I find a soulmate in the world? Xiaoling, my Xiaoling. I will never be able to see her again. In his tightly shut eyes, a beautiful, smiling face suddenly appeared in front of him. Bright eyes, cute and adorable. Suddenly, it turned into a pair of misty eyes, a withered face lying on a sickbed. In that instant, Lin Qingyin's mind was in a daze. It was as though he had returned to the past, to the time when he and that lover of his whom he swore to live and die together, sitting facing each other under the moonlight, in the midst of wind and rain. Xiaoling, ah? Lin Qing let out a long sigh as tears flowed down his cheeks. Jun Moxie fell silent for a moment before reciting softly. It's hard to meet, but it's also hard to say goodbye. The east wind is weak, and the 100 flowers wither. The silkworm's silk only ends when it dies, and the candle's tears dry when it turns to ash. Brother Lin's love is truly admirable. However, if that Miss Xiao Ling were to see you like this, I'm afraid that no matter where she goes, she would be deeply worried and filled with hatred. This poem was truly worthy of being Li Shangyin's masterpiece. Although it was only half a poem, when it was recited word by word, it caused the entire audience to be moved. As Miao Xiao Miao chewed on these few lines, she felt a lingering fragrance in her mouth. She could not help but be intoxicated by it. Such deep love, such beauty. Why was it that every single word that came from his mouth was so engraved into one's soul? Suddenly, her heart tightened. If he had not experienced such a thing personally, how could he have written such a touching poem? Could it be that he's already? As she thought of this, a strange feeling rose up in Xiao Miao's heart. It was as if she was feeling heartache for him, and also as if she was feeling sad for herself. The silkworm's silk only ends when it dies, and the candle's tears dry when it turns to ash. Lin Qing muttered in a daze. All of a sudden, a sense of sorrow welled up in his heart as he asked, "May I ask, Brother Mo, what should I do from now on?" "Follow your heart." Jun Mo, Xiao looked at the sentimental man in front of him with some pity. "Brother Lin, you have your own path to take. You know what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Being sentimental is not a bad thing, but don't let it become a cage for you. Break through this cage, and in this world, there's nothing you can't do." Many thanks for Brother Mo's guidance. Lin Qing clasped his hands and bowed deeply, his face full of gratitude as he said, "Brother Mo's comprehension of the Tao of music is indeed much better than mine. This lowly one admits defeat. For her, joy is not lascivious, sorrow is not hurt." Qing will definitely remember Brother Mo's teachings. It's a pity that after today's farewell, we will not meet again. Here, Qing wishes Brother Mo to turn misfortune into fortune, turning misfortune into fortune, and achieving great things soon. Many thanks for Brother Lin's auspicious words. Jun Moxie smiled lightly. The meaning behind Lin Qingyin's words of turning misfortune into fortune, was naturally referring to the perilous situation before them. His blessings were very subtle. It even implied that he was cursing the Zhan family brothers. How could Jun Moxie not understand this? Lin Qing laughed heartily and returned to his seat with his jade flute in hand. The first battle, the free and natural physique, great prodigy Mo had won. Looking at the judges raising the victory sign to Jun Moxie at the same time, Zhan Yushu's face turned extremely dark. Chapter 9:47. Just now, the person in question, Lin Qingyin, had already admitted defeat and all the judges had already given their verdict. But to try and stir things up like this was too much. Furthermore, asking June Moc to play a song that was even better than the Heartbreak Hymn was even more shameless. Just now, young Master June had already said that the song itself had already reached a state of perfection. It was only the performer's state of mind that was slightly flawed, causing the white to be slightly blurry. But to actually ask June Moc to play a song that was even better than the Heartbreak Hymn was clearly making things difficult for him. The victor is clear. Don't tell me you guys want to continue messing around? Meow Xiao Meow's brows furrowed, and her phoenix eyes were filled with rage. He hasn't even touched a musical instrument before. How can you say that the victor is clear? That voice was unrelenting. June Moxie's divine sense had already locked onto the person who was shouting. He was standing far away in the crowd, hiding his head behind someone's back. His head was lowered, and he was shouting at the top of his lungs. Normally, people who shouted like this would have a very agitated expression on their faces. But this fellow clearly had a guilty look on his face, afraid that others would recognize him. Zhang Qingfeng's expression did not change, but a hint of smugness flashed across his eyes. This person was the backup he had arranged beforehand. If Mo Junyi won, no matter what the reason was, he had to find this person. Even if he had to find a bone in an egg, he had to overturn Mo Junye's victory. June Moxie only needed to sweep his divine sense once to understand everything. He sneered coldly in his heart. If you guys knew that I'm that Dongfang who played the smiling, proud, pugilistic world at Chrysanthemum City's Tongguan Hall, I'm afraid you guys wouldn't be in such a hurry to give me a chance to perform. The Heartbreaking Hymn is indeed perfect, but perfection can also be divided into different grades. As the saying goes, justice is in the hearts of the people. Fine, since someone has raised a doubt, then I shall play a song for everyone. Lest someone finds a bone in an egg and continues to act shamelessly. Do you think I'm right, young Master Zhang? June Moxie looked at Zhang Qingfeng with a smile that was not a smile. Of course, if you want to win, you must have overwhelming strength. Zhang Qingfeng smiled faintly and said, victory and defeat cannot be decided just by talking. Yeah, but when it comes to overturning the outcome of battle, you can't just rely on your glib tongue. June Moxie chuckled and said, it's even more impossible to rely on some shady methods and people who don't even dare to show their faces. My dear friend, since you have the guts to speak, why don't you stand out? I can guarantee that I will not pursue this matter, regardless of whether what you said is your own will or the will of others. The moment this sentence came out, Meow Xiao Meow burst out laughing. With her strength, she had naturally discovered that person. And the battle of words between June Moxie and Zhang Qingfeng had also allowed her to instantly understand everything that had happened. Ever since she came here, she had never seen Zhang Qingfeng speak a single word to this person. From the looks of it, this person must have been arranged by Zhang Qingfeng. Who would have thought that this person was so far-sighted and meticulous to think of defeat before thinking of victory? He had actually arranged everything in advance. But because of this, she became even more wary of Zhang Qingfeng. Then, wasn't everything that he had done previously, all those actions that made her feel warm, all a part of this person's meticulous plan? What was he trying to achieve by taking such painstaking effort to please her? Or rather, what was the Zhang family trying to do? In Meow Xiao Meow's heart, this was the first time she had raised this problem to the level of the entire Zhang family. She couldn't help but be alarmed. Brother Lin, this little brother didn't expect that there would be a meeting like this. I don't have any musical instruments with me, so I can only lend you my jade flute. June Moxie nodded with a smile. Lin Qingyi nodded with a smile and took out the jade flute. After carefully wiping it in clean water, he used a piece of white silk to carry the jade flute over to June Moxie. In the Misty Mansion, this kind of method was the greatest respect a musician could show to a fellow musician. Originally, with Lin Qingyin's status as a great musician, he naturally had his own principles. It was impossible for him to lend an instrument that never left his side to someone else. But from Lin Qingyin's actions, everyone could clearly feel the atmosphere. That was Mo Junyi was borrowing Lin Qing Yin's jade flute to perform a song. The one who should feel honored was Lin Qing Yin himself, as well as the jade flute. Jun Moxie received the jade flute and felt as though it was weightless. He couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "Good flute." This jade flute was practically weightless in his hands. Such a quality of jade could only be achieved by the extremely rare light spirit jade. A good flute must also be matched with a good person. In my hands, this jade flute is truly a waste. Right now, I can only place my hopes on Brother Mo. I hope that in Brother Mo's hands, it will be able to produce a different sound. Lin Qing laughed dejectedly as he retreated back into the jade flute. Brother Lin is too humble. Jun Moxie laughed lightly as he looked at the jade flute in his hands. The song I'm about to play was written by a lady, and it has been passed down for hundreds of years. Perhaps the heavens were jealous of her beauty, but this beautiful lady had always been frowning in sorrow her entire life. Her body was frail, and she passed away before she even reached the age of 20. A beauty that could topple an entire generation had vanished into the dust, causing everyone to sigh in pity. However, because of our remote location, this song has never been passed down. Back then, I was fortunate enough to learn this song by chance. Today, I'll play it for everyone to enjoy. As he said this, the ears of many of the judges perked up. Clearly, this was a song that no one had heard before, and it was even composed by a lady. This lady was indeed a beauty that could topple an entire city. However, because of her frail body, she was always bedridden and rarely went out. Her greatest joy was to watch the flowers bloom and wilt in front of the courtyard, and to watch the clouds roll and move. That day, hundreds of flowers bloomed in the garden, and she spent the entire day admiring them. Her heart was filled with joy, and she decided to go again the next day. But on that very night, a strong wind blew, and a light rain fell. The thousands of flowers that were in full bloom all withered in a single night. As Jun Moxie spoke up to this point, Meow Xiao Meow could not help but let out a soft, "If this lady was in her place, she would definitely be extremely heartbroken, especially since this lady was bedridden and her heart was naturally weak. To have her few pleasures destroyed because of sudden change in nature, wouldn't that be even more unbearable?" As expected, Jun Moxie said, she heard the sound of the wind and the rain at night, and her heart was already extremely anxious. When the sun had just risen the next day, she put on her clothes and went to the garden to see her favorite flowers. But what was placed in front of her was a tragic scene of fallen red flowers. She was very sad. Yesterday, there were still thousands of flowers, but today, they had withered to this state. However, even though she was sad, she could not bear to see these petals being crushed in the mud. So, she swept all the petals on the ground, put them in a sachet, and buried them. Just as she was burying the flowers, she suddenly thought of herself. Wasn't she also in the prime of her life? But she was seriously ill and might not be able to leave this world. So, if she could bury the flowers today, who would bury her in the future? Perhaps it was because she was touched by the scene, or perhaps it was because of her heart. This extraordinary lady improvised a poem named Song of the Burial of Flowers. The song that I'm going to play today was composed by her, and it was a song that she composed herself. And that woman, within 3 days after the song was composed, passed away. After hearing Brother Mo's words, I really can't wait to listen to this Song of the Burial of Flowers. Meow Xiao Meow's eyes were filled with fascination, and she said with great interest, "But before Brother Mo plays the song, can you first write down the poem?" "Since Lady Meow has asked, of course I can," Jun Moxie said generously. Meow Xiao Meow waved her hand, and the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone were brought over. She placed them in front of her and said with a smile, "Brother Mo, you only need to recite the poem. Leave the recording to me." "That's good." Jun Moxie understood what she meant. They might have to compete in calligraphy in a while, so it was better not to reveal his trump card for the time being. The two of them acted as if they were singing a two-man show, one after the other, as if there was no one else around, and the atmosphere of the song was enhanced. The song of the burial of flowers had yet to be played, but it had already penetrated deep into the hearts of the people and tugged at their heartstrings. First, a touching story was told to evoke the resonance in the hearts of the people. Then, the related lyrics were written out, and it was shown in front of everyone. Finally, the song was officially played. This undoubtedly allowed the power of the song to reach an unprecedented level. As Meow Xiao Meow dipped the brush in her hand into the ink, June Moxie softly recited the song, the once popular song of the burial of flowers on earth, a song that almost everyone, regardless of age or gender, could recite, finally blossomed with its unique splendor in this different world. Flowers wilt and fly all over the sky. Who will pity the fragrance when the red is gone? Soft gossamer threads float in the spring pavilion, and the falling catkins lightly touch the embroidered curtain. The daughter in her boudoir cherishes the twilight of spring, and her heart is full of melancholy with nowhere to vent. She holds a hoe in her hand out of her boudoir and bears to step on the fallen flowers. Willow silk and elm pods are fragrant, no matter if the peach floats or the plum flies. If the peach and plum can bloom again next year, who will know next year's boudoir? 3 months of incense has been built. The swallows between the beams are too heartless. Although the flowers can be pecked next year, it doesn't mean that the Taoist is gone and the nest is empty. 360 days a year, wind, sabers, and frost swords pressed against each other. How long can you be bright and beautiful? Once you drift, it is hard to find. It is easy to see flowers when they bloom, but hard to find when they fall. Leaning on a hoe, I shed tears on the branches above. I saw traces of blood. The cuckoo was speechless. At dusk, she returned with her pickaxe and closed the heavy door. The green lamp shines on the wall, and the man is asleep. The cold rain knocks on the window, and the quilt is not warm. Blame the slave for being so troublesome? Half of it was because he felt sorry for the spring, and the other half was because he was annoyed. Lien Chun suddenly came and went in anger. In the end, she left without a word. Last night, there was a sad song outside the courtyard. Who knows if it was the soul of a flower or a soul of a bird? It is hard to keep the soul of a flower and the soul of a bird. The bird is speechless, and the flower is ashamed. I wish for a pair of wings to grow on my side and fly with the flowers to the end of the sky. At the end of the sky, where is the fragrant mound? It is not like a brocade bag containing beautiful bones, a piece of pure land covering up romantic affairs. It is better to be clean than to sink into a ditch with filth. Now that you have died, I will bury you. When will I mourn? Today I bury the flowers. But who will I know when I will be buried? Look at the withered flowers of spring. It is the time for a beauty to die of old age. Once the spring is over, the beauty will grow old, the flower will fall, and the person will die without anyone knowing. As June Moxie recited and Meow Xiao Meow wrote, everyone was immersed in this sorrowful yet beautiful and elegant poem. Even the two brothers Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu, who were always against June Moxie, could not say a single word at this moment. There was actually such a beautiful poem in this world, and every word and sentence was so real, so close to everyone's life. That helplessness, that carefreeness in the face of life and death, using flowers as a metaphor for one's aloofness. Chapter 948. As for Meow Xiao Meow, she couldn't help but fall into a daze as the lines of the poem appeared in front of her eyes. 360 days a year, the wind and the frost press against each other. How long can the bright and fresh beauty last? Once drifting, it's hard to find at the end of the sky. Where is the hill of incense? Not like a brocade bag to collect beautiful bones, a piece of pure land to cover up romantic affairs. The essence of purity comes and goes, stronger than being trapped in a ditch by filth. Now that you are dead, I bury you. When will you mourn? Today, I bury flowers. I laugh like a fool. Who will I bury in the future? Look at the waning flowers of spring. It's time for a beauty to die of old age. At the end of spring, a beauty will grow old, the flowers will fall, and the person will die without anyone knowing. As she wrote, Meow Xiao Meow's eyes couldn't help but moisten. It was as if she could see a thin and sickly woman with a frail and delicate body strenuously picking up the petals scattered on the ground. Then, she collected the petals one by one and put them into a sachet that she personally sewed. Then, she gently buried them on the ground and finally turned them into a fragrant soul. In a trance, Meow Xiao Meow could almost feel that the woman was herself. Although I don't have that sickly body, living in this misty mansion, I'm constantly under the power struggle. It's hard to guarantee that one day I'll become a tool for family marriage and be forced to marry someone I don't like at all or even hate. If that's the case, it's really better than not like a brocade bag to collect beautiful bones, a piece of pure land to cover up romantic affairs. The essence of purity comes and goes, stronger than being trapped in a ditch by filth. Just when everyone was immersed in the beautiful artistic conception of this poem, a faint sound of a flute suddenly sounded, as if it came from the end of the sky. Song of the Burial of Flowers. One song of the burial of flowers, and 100 people's souls were all hurt. The sound of the flute sobbed, as if it was crying and complaining. The myriad of colors, all kinds of charm, and all kinds of amorous feelings were slowly displayed in everyone's hearts, and then slowly disappeared, and finally turned into nothingness, becoming a wisp of melancholy. A long time after the song ended, no one spoke. It was as if that beautiful flute music was still lingering in the air. Lingering for 3 days, sighed this song. The music master could not help but rub the corner of his eyes. There was a clear tear there. It's really amazing. It's like a divine song from the heavens. For an ordinary person, to be able to hear it played once in their life would be enough for them. That's right, Meow Xiao Meow's consciousness was still wavering from the music, and her voice was somewhat dreamy, as if her soul had left her body. Her eyes were hazy as she muttered, "This is the most beautiful song I've heard in my entire life." Perfect? No, this was a perfect song. Brother Mo's song allowed Qingyin to finally understand the true meaning of music. What is the true Tao of music? After hearing this song today, Qingyin suddenly felt that everything I've learned in the past is not worth mentioning at all. Haha, to think that I'm a #1 in music among the younger generation of the Misty Mansion, boasting shamelessly. But who would have thought that true music? I've never even touched the edge of it. Lin Qingyin said in an intoxicated manner. When he said this, even Zhang Yushu could not help but nod his head. He was also someone who was well-versed in music, and, at this moment, he really did not want to speak against his conscience. Only then did he realize that it was not in line with his position, and so he shook his head. But he also felt that shaking his head would be a disservice to his conscience, and so he nodded his head again. Song of the Burial of Flowers. The melody was perfect and flawless. The beauty of the melody was something that no one had ever heard in their lives. That helpless sorrow, that desolation that caused one to waver endlessly, and that prideful and pure heart made everyone's hearts tremble in admiration. After hearing such a perfect song, everyone was in unison and applauded it. Even Zhang Qingfeng's people could not find any fault with this song. Jun Moxie had won the first battle with an overwhelming advantage. No one dared to compare it with this song of the Shattering Heart anymore. Because this was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. There was no way to compare. Brother Mo, may I ask the name of this talented lady? Although Junimo Xie had said that this girl had already passed away several hundred years ago, but after hearing the Song of the Burial of Flowers, Lin Qingyin felt as if he had seen that frail and sickly girl sweep away the fallen flowers by herself in the autumn wind and rain. Although Junimo Xie had said that this girl had already passed away a few hundred years ago, after hearing the Song of the Burial of Flowers, Lin Qingyin felt as if he had seen it with his own eyes. He almost wished that he could be there at that time to console that beautiful lady who had suffered a tragic fate. Speaking of which, what a coincidence. Her surname is also Lin, and she is of the same family as you, Brother Lin. Jun Moxie sighed lightly. Her name is Lin Daiyu. Jun Moxie sighed with emotion. After transmigrating to this world, he finally understood one thing. The advantage of being a transmigrator was simply too great. But after the song of the burial of flowers, before everyone could even regain their senses, no one actually came out to fight, and the entire field was empty. Humans were always like this. They were filled with jealousy and dissatisfaction towards those who were just a little bit better than them. But if the other party was really much better than them, then it would form a kind of admiration and worship. For example, if a 10,000 yuan household was compared to a 100,000 yuan household, they would only think that the latter's luck was better than theirs. If it was me, I could do it too. But if they were compared to Superman Lee, no matter if it was a 10,000 yuan household or a 100,000 yuan household, they would only worship him, because the person they were comparing to was a legend. Compared to a true legend. Were they retarded? Right now, Jun Moxie was the same. Before the first round, Great Prodigy Mo was only a legendary prodigy. But now he was a true prodigy. Everyone's feelings were naturally different. In truth, the main reason why these people who wanted to compete with Jun Dashao came here today was because they had been enticed by the Zhan family. As for people like Lin Qingyin, they were directly forced to come here. But in the future, as outstanding geniuses, they were also unconvinced in their hearts. These people all had rather impressive achievements in their respective fields. Although they were still far from achieving success, there were still quite a number of them who had a great reputation in the misty, illusory manner, becoming famous at a young age. Who wouldn't be proud? But the moment this free and natural physique prodigy came, he immediately grabbed the attention of all the upper echelons of the Misty Mansion. No matter what kind of achievements they had, in front of the legendary free and natural physique prodigy, they were all not worth mentioning at all, especially since this physique was innate and had nothing to do with this Mo Jun Ye's hard work. This made everyone feel even more unbalanced. But after seeing him today, especially after the song of the burial of flowers, everyone retracted the arrogance in their hearts. They were undoubtedly very proud, and they were all hoping that they could gain something from today's event. But that didn't mean that they could go against their conscience. The other party's attainments in music had actually reached such a high level. Just this point alone was enough to make everyone look at him in a different light. Not to mention that he was also a prodigy with the free and natural physique. Regardless of talent, he was still an outstanding talent. How about I go up against Brother Mo in the second round? Finally, another person walked out. This time it was a youth. He was skinny and had a steady posture. His face was full of confidence, as if everything under the heavens was within his grasp. His eyes shone brightly. But this kind of light did not come from cultivating Xianqi. Instead, it was because his eyes were exceptionally spirited and full of life. Although this youth was not old, his aura was extremely steady. With a single look, Jun Moxie could tell that this youth's mental fortitude was something that even some of the more experienced old fellows could not compare to. May I know who you are? Jun Moxie looked at him. Chapter 949. So it's Brother Qi. My apologies for not recognizing you. Jun Moxie nodded slightly. Originally, the Tao of chess is just an insignificant branch, just an insignificant skill. It's naturally harmless to use it to cultivate one's mind and body, but if it's used to fight for victory, then it's not good enough. Brother Mo's song moves one's soul. You're a refined person. Can you play a game with me? It has nothing to do with victory or defeat. Just do your best, Qi Wanjie said with a smile. His name was originally Qi Wanjie, but after he became famous, he changed his name to Qi Wanjie, changing his name from Jie to Jie. This was to show that in the game of chess, there were thousands of changes and tens of thousands of tribulations, causing others to be unable to see through him. Of course, it wasn't without pride. Jun Moxie couldn't help but laugh coldly in his heart. Looks like this fellow should be the main force to deal with him. And this fellow should be good at scheming, and his character was also very hypocritical. Just from that one sentence alone, it had already been completely revealed. You keep saying, if it's used to fight for victory, then it's not good enough. But you're asking me to play a game with you? It actually has nothing to do with victory or defeat, just do your best. Since it's a game of chess, if one doesn't have the intention to win, how can one win? Especially in the Tao of chess, one must be calculative and calculative in order to be able to calculate one's own position on the chessboard, calculate one's own advantages and disadvantages, and then make changes to be able to be hypocritical to such an extent at such a young age. He can be considered as one of a kind. This person is a hypocrite, but this young master has met quite a number of hypocrites. Not to mention others, just Li Yuran's cultivation is much higher than yours. But even Li Yuran is much more practical than you. What the hell is this? That's natural. Brother Chi's words can be said to be completely correct. It really resonates with me. The Tao of chess, even if it's studied to the most profound level, is merely revolving in a small area, an insignificant skill. It really lives up to its name. Jun Moxie naturally didn't think so in his heart. Not only was the chess skill not an insignificant skill now, but it could also bring glory to the country. But now, he had to continue like this. This was because when Jun Moxie saw the squinty eyes in front of him, he became angry. If you want to help the Zhang family brothers deal with me, then do it openly. To think that you still have to put on a sanctimonious act and say such **t. You're purposely trying to make this young master feel disgusted. If I don't give you a good beating, how would I be able to stand up to your pretense? Qi Wanjie. Mother of **her. I'll just let you be Qi Wanjie. Let's just completely end it here. You dare to play mind games with me. See if I don't play you to death. However, I'm not very good at chess. I've only learned it for a few months. But since Brother Qi said it's just a small trick, I'll accompany Brother Qi for some entertainment. After all, it's just to cultivate the body and mind, and it has nothing to do with winning or losing. I think I should be able to do it. Jun Dashao said in a hypocritical manner. Brother Mo is really humorous. Since Brother Mo also says that the way of chess is an insignificant skill, then don't blame me for not showing mercy. A cold light flashed in Qi Wanjie's eyes, but he still maintained his elegance as he spoke indifferently. Oh, not showing mercy? Brother Qi is a gentleman, and a famous person doesn't do underhanded things. But I have a question in front of you. If I blame you for being merciless, then will you be merciful? Jun Mo Xie asked in a taunting manner. Facing someone like Brother Mo, I believe no one will show mercy. Qi Wanjie was already a little impatient. This Mo Jun, you was really too detestable. I was just being humble just now, and you actually stepped on my nose and took it too far. Is that so? Brother Qi's words really displeased me. I originally thought that as a chess king, your elegance would naturally be a notch higher than others. Even if you're not open and above board, you wouldn't go back on your words. But I didn't expect that what you said just now was like farting. When other people fart, it stinks for a while, but you actually swallowed it back. I'm really impressed, really impressed. This skill, this composure is truly #1 in the world. As expected of the chess king, you live up to your reputation. It's really true that hearing about you is not as good as seeing you in person, and seeing you in person is even better than hearing about you. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. This skill, this composure, is truly the #1 in the world. As expected of the chess king, you live up to your reputation. Seeing that he had already successfully disrupted his state of mind, Jun Moxie naturally wanted to follow up with another attack. In the path of chess, one state of mind was the most important. If one state of mind was not stable, even a peerless national player might lose to a child who had just started playing chess. This was definitely not something too surprising. Mo Junyi. Anger finally appeared on Qi Wanjie's face, and he said, "Let's see who will be utterly defeated today, leaving nothing behind." Utterly defeated? Completely annihilated? It seems to be quite serious. I'll only say one thing. Little brother, you're not allowed to cry when you lose. Jun Moxie said in a solemn tone. Although you're still young, if you cry when you lose in such an occasion, that would really not look too good. Qi Wanjie's face was already a little pale, and he snorted heavily. At this time, his followers had already arranged the chess pieces on the chessboard. He no longer paid any attention to Jun Moxie and walked towards the chessboard. Evidently, he could not wait to torture this free and natural physique in the chess game. I don't care what free and natural physique you have, but since you've offended me, I won't let you have any face. Especially when second young Master Jean promised me a huge mansion and the position of the chess master of the Misty Mansion chess house, as well as 4 beautiful concubines. I must obtain all of these. I must obtain them. I must succeed. I must step over your body, prepared to become my stepping stone, legendary prodigy. Although Jun Moxie's face was calm and collected, his heart was beating like a drum. Back when he was training in Go, he had only dabbled in it a little. Although Jun Xie's comprehension was not bad, and his abilities were not weak, it was only not weak. He was far from reaching the level of a so-called professional player. With Jun Daxiao's true level, if placed in the current Go world, he would at most be at the level of an amateur 7 or 8 Dan. With this level of ability, it would not be a problem for him to deal with most situations. But if he were to compete with a true Go expert, the chances of him winning would be extremely slim. And this was all thanks to that old thing in his previous life. The old thing's requirements for a so-called qualified assassin were ridiculously high. He wanted the assassin to be familiar with all the relatively common skills, as well as to have a good grasp of unorthodox knowledge. Only then would he be able to perfectly conceal himself in any situation and kill the target silently. But this requirement was not something a human could achieve, because in his previous life, the evil monarch had not actually completed all of it. At most, he had only completed 70% of the training set by that old thing. The old man had a wish in his heart to create the ultimate legend in the world of assassins. Even if one day that legend stopped being an assassin and put down the butcher's knife and went to university to become a doctoral supervisor of any subject, anyone who heard this would understand that this was an extremely crazy and perverted, terrifying plan. Zither, chess, calligraphy, poetry, wine, tea, the 3 religions and 9 schools of thought, medicine, astrology, irrigation, the 8 major subjects, physics, chemistry, F***. Even Jun Moxie would feel a headache whenever he thought about it. However, after coming to this different world, while Jun Moxie felt a headache, he was also infinitely grateful for the cruel training back then. If it wasn't for the old man forcing him to learn these things, he would never be able to do as well as he did now. Even if he had a super cheating device like the Hongjun Pagoda, it wouldn't work. Without a basic foundation, even if he was given a peerless martial arts secret manual, he would still be at a loss, at least now. He was somewhat regretful. Why didn't he study Go properly back then? As long as he could reach the level of a professional 5th or 6th Dan, he wouldn't need to cram at the last minute. Today's games seem to be quite difficult. What should he do to defeat this young chess master of the misty, illusory manner? Even if this guy's level was at a low level in this world, he should at least be at a professional level, right? Based on his own strength, the chances of success seemed rather slim. Jun Moxie suddenly thought of a phrase that the old man often said back then. In Go, there are moves within the game, and there are moves outside the game. He couldn't help but feel moved. Looking at Qi Wanjie, who was already sitting upright in front of the chessboard, Jun Moxie suddenly smiled strangely and said, "Brother Qi, are you ready? Chess is an elegant matter, and one must act with integrity. As the current Go King of Misty Mansion, if you were to lose to a nobody like me in the end, it would be a very embarrassing thing. This would be detrimental to your reputation. A lifetime of fame. No need for you to worry." Qi Wanjie looked at him darkly and said, "I believe that my reputation is not something that can be shaken by any little cat or dog. Is that so? Brother Qi, you are really confident. That day when I was playing against the chess saint of Xian continent, Hua Wu Qo, the chess saint of Hua Wu Qo once said something that is still fresh in my memory." "What? You played against Hua Wu Qo before? What did he say?" Qi Wanjie's expression turned solemn, and a hint of nervousness finally appeared on his expressionless face. "Hua Wu Qo, the chess saint of Xian continent. had made a name for himself when he was young, and had never tasted defeat for over 200 years. If the Nine Nether First Young Master was the legend of Xian skills in the Xian continent, then this person was the legend of Xian continent's chess skills. As a Go expert, no matter how arrogant Qi Wanjie was, he didn't dare to say anything in front of this chess saint. Now that he heard that this free and natural physique person had played against Hua Wu Qiu before, his heart couldn't help but sink. Could it be that this Mo Jun was really proficient in the way of Go? Then, how was his chess skills? A person who had the qualifications to play against Hua Wu Qiu definitely couldn't be underestimated. At this point, Qi Wanjie completely retracted his underestimation. His battle intent rose, and his gaze locked onto Jun Dashao. Chapter 950. If he didn't say this, although Qi Wanjie was wary, he would still have his suspicions in this regard. But Jun Moxie had said it so straightforwardly, and it had instead reduced the little suspicions in Qi Wanjie's heart by 90%, and his apprehension had increased by 90%. An ordinary chess player would never dare to casually mention a chess grandmaster, just like how a top Xian expert would never dare to blaspheme the Nine Nether First Young Master. But there was only one reason why Jun Moxie could speak of Hua Wu Qiu in such a casual tone. That was, Jun Moxie didn't really care about Hua Wu Qiu. At least, he didn't treat Hua Wu Qiu as an insurmountable existence. If that was really the case, then what did it mean? Could it be that Mo Junye's chess skills had reached such a terrifying level? I believe that Brother Mo is not such a senseless person. Qi Wanjie's tone instantly weakened by at least 30%. Brother Qi, you don't have to be so concerned. I'm ashamed to speak of it. Back then, I competed with Hua Wu Qiu for 3 rounds. Haha, I was defeated by a single move. Hua Wu Qiu's chess skills are indeed worthy of being #1 in history. No one can compare to him. I'm obsessed with chess and rarely lose. I'm usually arrogant, but when I meet a true expert, I still can't escape defeat. Today, I'm fortunate to meet the chess king of Misty Mansion. I hope that Brother Qi can be like Brother Wu Qiu and grant me a defeat. Jun Moxie said slowly, as if he was reminiscing about the past. Qi Wanjie was speechless, but the wariness in his eyes grew thicker and thicker. He had actually played 3 rounds with Hua Wu Qiu before victor was decided. That meant that out of the 3 rounds, he had at least won 1 round against Hua Wu Qiu. Although I've never seen Hua Wu Qiu, nor fought with him, I've studied all the records of his games. Although it's not all of them, it's at least 80 to 90% of them. Hua Wu Qiu's abilities are unfathomable, and his style of playing chess is like that of a teacher, a proper steed, and would never take risks for luck. His foresight is deep, and there's no lack of meticulousness in his majesty. Otherwise, how could he have created the legend of never losing a single battle? Although I'm conceited, I admit that I'm far from this person. But Mo Jun, was actually able to play against Hua Wu Qiu for 3 rounds, and only lost by a single move after a long battle. In other words, his chess skills were roughly equal to Hua Wu Qiu's. Even if there was a difference, it shouldn't be too big. In that case, if I were to face such an expert today, wouldn't I definitely win? That day, at the end of the chess game, Brother Wu Qiu said with great emotion. Jun Mo Xie smiled reservedly, changing the way he addressed the chess saint from Elder Hua to Brother Wu Qiu. Thousands of years will always be empty, from ancient times till today. It is just a game of chess. T. Mo on eyes, Jet. Qi Wanjie murmured. Suddenly, he was sweating profusely, and his originally calm gaze became a little dazed. Because just from this poem, he could see the magnanimity of this chess Saint Hua Wu Qiu. The path of chess had an inseparable connection with one's magnanimity and magnanimity. If one's magnanimity was not broad enough, and only focused on the gains and losses of a moment, then one would never achieve much in the path of chess. But if one only focused on the big picture and ignored the gains and losses of a moment, then one would never obtain victory. Only with the perfect combination of these two could one truly be a top-notch chess player. Qi Huangjie asked himself that he was still far from reaching such a level. Playing chess today was just a game of chess. How magnanimous was this? I admit that I am inferior to Elder Hua's magnanimity. Qi Huangjie sighed. He only felt that his confidence, which was like an iron wall, had already, intentionally or unintentionally, cracked open. Under the other party's narration that was like a trickling stream, it was slowly crumbling. At that time, after Elder Hua sighed, he suddenly laughed and said, "Little Mo, this old man suddenly thought of a couplet. Since I've seen you today, let me test you. How about that?" Jun Moxie saw that Qi Huangjie's state of mind had already loosened and was secretly delighted. But on the surface, he maintained his composure and chased after a desperate enemy. "May I ask what the couplet is?" Qi Huangjie couldn't help but ask. Jun Mo Xie wasn't the only one who was curious. Everyone present couldn't help but perk up their ears. Jun Mo Xie could be said to know how to tell a story. This story had never happened before, but under his interpretation, it had unexpectedly become vivid and lifelike. Everyone present couldn't help but want to listen to it. Everyone who heard it felt that this was something that had really happened before. Everyone's hearts were the same as Qi Huangjie. From complete disbelief at the start, to disbelief afterwards, to half-belief, to half-doubt, and finally to absolute certainty now. And at that time, I also asked Brother Wu Qiuo, "What is the couplet?" Jun Moxie revealed an expression of admiration and said, "Brother Hua said, 'Heaven as the chessboard, the stars as the chess pieces. Who can play?' This is the couplet." After Jun Moxie finished speaking, he looked at the silence of the place. Everyone was frowning and thinking hard. Heaven as the chessboard, the stars as the chess pieces. Who can play? How magnanimous is this couplet? Qi Huangjie let out a long sigh, concentrating in deep thought. He had always thought highly of himself, and his life's goal was to surpass Elder Hua Wu Qiuo. Now, that Hua Wu Qiuo had come up with a couplet. He naturally had to work hard to come up with a couplet. If he couldn't come up with a couplet, wouldn't that mean that he had no hope of catching up to Hua Wu Qiuo in this lifetime? Right now, although he was sitting in front of the chessboard, he no longer had any thoughts of victory or defeat in his heart. It could even be said that in his heart, he had completely forgotten about this match. All he was thinking about was this couplet. Qi Huangjie was different from Lin Qingyin. As the chess king of the Misty Mansion, he had his own status. Even the powerful Zhan family could not threaten him with force. But he also had his weaknesses. Zhan Yushu had given him many things and promised him even more. As long as he helped the Zhan family win against the free and natural physique possessor, Emo Junyi, he would be able to obtain countless benefits. Those were things that he had always dreamed of. Power, status, beauties, money. As long as he won today, Zhan Yushu would definitely give them to him. These were things that ordinary people could not obtain in their entire lives. Qi Huangjie naturally wanted them. But speaking of what he wanted the most, it was still the highest glory of the way of chess. Challenging Hua Wu Qiuo and defeating Hua Wu Qiuo. This was the goal and highest dream that he had pursued since he was young. There was no room for comparison between the two at all. There was no lack of talents present. Among them, there were many youths who were proud of their literary talents. Even the judges were frowning and mumbling to themselves. This was a couplet from the chess saint of this generation. And the foundation of this couplet could be said to be able to swallow the rivers and mountains, majestic and majestic. Just by hearing it, one could feel the heroic spirit in one's chest reaching the clouds and be filled with emotions. Heaven as the chessboard, stars as the chess pieces. Who could play such a couplet, such absolute? Who could come up with it casually? Qi Huangjie's mind wandered, his mind focused. Unknowingly, a thin layer of sweat had formed on his forehead, and his face had also turned a little pale. Among these people, he was undoubtedly the most concerned, because this couplet came from Hua Wu Qiuo. At this moment, he heard Emo Junyi sigh in shame. "I'm ashamed that Brother Hua came up with this couplet for me. Until today, I still haven't thought of the second couplet." Sigh. This sigh seemed to be filled with disappointment. Qi Wan Jie's spirit jolted, and he couldn't help but reveal a slight smile. He thought to himself, if he can come up with it, then how can it show me? Only you can't come up with it, but I came up with it. This proves that I'm better than you. This proves that Hua Wu Qo and I are on the same level, and even above you. Hua Wu Qo, the world calls you the chess saint, but I refuse to accept it. No matter what, I have to come up with the absolute couplet you've given. Just like your title of chess saint, sooner or later, it will belong to me, Qi Wan Jie. Qi Wan Jie racked his brains to think of this couplet, racking his brains to come up with the second couplet. Just as he was thinking so hard that his brain was in knots, he suddenly heard a smack in front of him. Mo Junye's voice said, "Brother Qi, how long do you want me to wait for? When will this game of chess start?" Qi Wan Jie opened his eyes in a daze. Only now did he realize that he was sitting in front of the chessboard, and opposite him, that free and natural physique prodigy was sitting upright and still, staring at him with a sharp gaze. In his hand, there was even a handful of chess pieces, obviously waiting for him to guess the first move. What? Qi Wan Jie asked in a daze. Right now, he still hadn't completely woken up from the contemplation of that couplet. Guess who goes first? Don't tell me you don't even know this? A few black lines appeared on Jun Moxie's face, but he almost laughed out loud in his heart. Looks like this fellow's mind has already wandered off. Guess who goes first? Oh, right, guess who goes first? Qi Wan Jie almost subconsciously picked up a chess piece from a box and placed it on the chessboard. Jun Moxie slowly let go of his hand, and the chess pieces in his hand fell onto the chessboard. He mumbled, 1 pair, 2 pairs, 3 pairs. Exactly 6 pieces. Looks like I've made the first move. Brother Qi, thanks for letting me win. Oh, Qi Wan Jie was still thinking. Heaven is chessboard, stars as chess pieces. Who can play? Who can play? Such absolutes. How can one come up with a second couplet? And what object can be compared to the heavens and stars? Stars as the chessboard, with heaven as the game. How to deal with it? A crisp smack sounded by his ear. Looking over, there was already an additional black chess piece on the chessboard, landing right on the star position in the upper right corner. The opponent had already made his move. A sliver of clarity instantly appeared in Qi Wan Jie's mind, and he responded with a chess piece on the lower left corner almost without thinking. With a smack, another black chess piece landed on the star position in the upper left corner. What kind of opening is this? Qi Wan Jie had made a name for himself in chess for half his life, but he had never seen such a strange opening before. This position was said to be guarding the corner, but it was a little far, said to be surrounding the center, but it wasn't said to be occupying the edge. That didn't make sense in the way of chess. There had always been the saying of golden horn, silver edge, grass belly, and the opponent's chess moves right now had completely overturned Qi Wan Jie's previous understanding. What he didn't know was that it was one thing for him not to have seen it before, but the star position of chess pieces was the best method that Earth had only researched in the recent hundreds of years to guard the corner, watch the edge, and look at the center. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.